I'm gonna press the button to go live. Oh, I guess I could have gotten you to count us down. Hello, we are live.
Hi.
Welcome. Thanks to the chat. Thank you for your understanding on the delay. I was doing a sleep training with my daughter. So while you were sitting in the chat, I was listening to her cry. And then she stopped crying. Now she's asleep. Now I can record a podcast. What's this face you're making, Brian?
I'm just having some I figured it out. I just had some sounds coming from places I didn't expect them to come from.
All right. So yeah, say hello now. We're live.
Hi.
You didn't realize that?
I think I said hi.
Oh, you did? Okay, great.
Could you hear me?
Yeah, you sound great. Sound good to me.
Weird.
Okay. Well, Brian's figuring that out.
Every time.
We got Shams, we got Norm, the reinventors. Who's the reinventor? Oh, reinvestors. Yeah.
What did you invest and what do you the reinvestors are really pumped for their RSP receipt refund.
Yeah. Unless they had all their investments in that bank that went out of business.
What bank was that? Bank went out of business?
Yeah. Oh, you were on vacation last week.
I disconnected from the world.
What's it called? Like a Silicon Valley bank in the States went out of business.
Yeah.
And I think some investment, I think that the markets took a hit for a little bit because people are freaking out about that. Because when a bank, the last time banks went out of business was 2008, right? When things went really really badly.
Did banks go out of business then, or just loan places?
Well, yeah, because banks were expecting money to come back from mortgage loans.
Did this bank get bailed out?
I don't think this bank is getting bailed out from what I know, but I'm not really following it too closely. But I do know that some people were telling me, this is become a financial podcast now. I hope people don't mind. So some people were telling me that they think one key reason why the bank went out of business is because interest rates were so high and they weren't prepared for that huge change in the interest rate. I guess banks have to but I don't know the reason, but apparently that's not good for a bank when the interest rate gets that high. You'd think with my variable mortgage, I think the bank loves it when the interest rate gets higher. I just pay them more money. But I guess for whatever, that's so anyway. So apparently now in America, they're thinking that they need to reduce interest rates or stop raising the rates. So
yeah.
And then how Canada always copies the States.
Yeah, so, they haven't been it hasn't been such a close copy lately.
Oh, the bank did get bailed out, as Sam is saying. Okay, so I guess we all need to listen to. Okay, in more fun news, Paddy is asking,
Planet Money. For
what's on my mug? It's the that dog, the This Is Fine dog. The house is on fire, and the dog's just this is fine.
Was that a gift?
I don't remember. It's a comic that I like. I guess I really like it. It really speaks to me, And so I don't remember though how I got it. Maybe it was a gift. I'll have to ask Dina. She Dina has all my memories for me. It's pretty good. She tells me funny memories. She tells me fun things I said and fun things we did. Sometimes she tells me a story of something funny I did and I laugh. I'm that person sounds so fun. I'm it's great. It's great to not have a memory. I don't know if
that's the most humble thing possible or the most narcissistic thing possible.
I mean, it's always fun to hear a funny story. Then the punchline is and that person was you. I'm oh.
I don't know if I've ever, maybe once or twice it's happened.
All right.
Wow. I'm jealous. I'm jealous of that you could make such, if I make a good joke, I remember that. I hold on to that. I have to.
All right. So let's start the show. I guess we got a big one here.
Woo.
I'm not going to be rushing off today, by the way, Brian. I could go as long as you want.
Oh no, I'm rushing off. So I'm back to school tomorrow.
Then. Back to school. Okay, I'm ready. Are you ready? Oh, we have to start recording.
My fault. I love that.
Yeah, because
always ready to place blame.
Not fault. I mean, it's your call. I mean to say, it's I'm here.
The one time he doesn't have to run off.
Want to
in the future now? Are you not going to have to run off because
no? I will
you've got
always.
A solution. Oh, okay.
But just today we decided Dina's going to go to bed before I'm done recording. So there's nothing for me to do. I mean, I would like to edit the show. And
I really your joint commitment to spending Sunday nights together. Very impressive.
Oh, well, I mean, also The Last of Us is over, so we don't need to rush to watch that.
No.
Though Succession is back, but I'm not so obsessed with Succession. I can wait till tomorrow to watch Succession.
Is that the I always mix up that one and the memory one.
Severance.
Yeah.
That was a good one. Oh man, I'll be really excited when that comes
I watched
back.
the first episode and then I wanted to keep watching, but I didn't.
What happened?
Your
Apple TV
anymore.
got expired?
No, I was just like, really, it wasn't a high priority.
Oh, that's fair. I would say the finale of Severance left me like wanting in a way that like I would give anything to see the next episode of Severance right now. Like I really want to know what happens next. Sure? What do you mean? Is it over?
Is it like over?
No, there's going to be season 2. It got renewed. Okay. I'm saying I'm just like so excited for it. Like unlike others, like some shows, the finale sort of like I think Succession, the last season, kind of wrapped up the story of that season. And I'm curious to see what happens next, but I'm not like on the edge of my seat. Just like, how could you stop here? Like I need to know the next second, like what's going to happen in the next moment. Anyway. All right. Count us down. We got to start recording here.
Okay. 3, 2, 1, record.
Recording.
Thanks, okay. Sam and Shams for keeping the facts straight in the chat, by the way.
Yeah, and I'm just a huge source of misinformation.
Patty, Andrea, Ben, Norm, and the reinvestors who got this all started.
All right.
Okay. It should be fun tonight. Like we're both just going for it. It's gonna be good.
I don't know what that means.
Well,
am I going for it?
Like we're both. I have not done my usual preparation routine.
Oh, I see. It'll be good. This will be good.
I'm looking forward to it. I think it's going to be amazing.
I'm going for it.
We're always going for it. I said we're going for it, and then you suggested we weren't. You were concerned what that meant.
I didn't. No, I wasn't. I was curious, but it's fine. It's good.
Okay.
All right. Got my Keeping Karlsson playoff pool winning hoodie on. We should mention the playoff pool at some point. Maybe at the end.
There's so much to mention. We're
bad. We're not good at this. We don't market ourselves.
We aren't.
I was telling you earlier today, Michael Amato.
Yeah, he's great.
If anyone, he was on the show like a month ago.
Yeah,
he's got the best Twitter. Like his Twitter is what our Twitter should be. He just tweets out great tweets every day.
That's, you know what? It's okay. That's not our niche.
But like we have all these Twitter followers. We're like letting them down. We're like never tweeting. And when we do tweet, it's like some little sarcastic joke. He's like giving stats. We need to get some. If anyone listening here wants to like help us with Twitter, we could use it. Just copy Michael Amato's Twitter. Any stat that he didn't like, but different, like different players, but the same idea.
Just put it in your own voice,
He doesn't even use a voice. He's just like, this guy has 3 goals in his last 6 games. Might be a good pickup. It's like, why don't we do that? Anyway,
if only this was our full-time job, we'd be so much better at it.
Oh my God, yeah. Is that his full-time job? I don't know.
It's got to be at least like a half-time job.
I feel like if this was our full-time job, it would be like less enjoyable. Like I feel like I'd feel more.
But we'd be so much better at it.
Yeah, but like it's more fun as a hobby.
We'd be better at the less fun parts.
Yeah, because we'd be forced to, right?
Yeah.
But I feel like the part of the fun of doing the show is like, we could just kind of go for it. We don't have to like worry that like if it's bad, we're like gonna like lose our houses.
Yes, so. That's a really nice thing. We don't have to worry that a bad show means we lose our houses.
But okay, we should start. Okay.
Whew. Wow.
Yay!
We're privileged.
Sorry, what was that?
I'm sorry. I said we're privileged.
Yeah. I mean, I feel great.
Okay.
Yay! Yes! Welcome everybody to another episode of the Keeping Karlsson Fantasy Hockey Podcast, the longest running fantasy hockey podcast in the world, hosted by 2 guys who had a week off of the couple last week while a lot of people are fighting for ultimate glory. I'm your host, Elon Dubrovsky, and with me to break down everything that's going on in the NHL over the past week and to look forward for the next couple of weeks. Yeah, Brian and I didn't have a couple matchups, but we're also big in other leagues, and Brian was just on a bye. He's still fighting for things. And so, yeah, we're dialed in, and I think we've got a lot of good content for you because now is the time when we need to just think super short term. And I love shows like this where we don't have to worry about like what's going to happen a month from now. We're worried about 1 week from now. And the most short-sighted person I know is here with me. I don't know why I said that. Here with me to do this all. He was off last week on vacation, but he's back, ready to roll. It's my co-host and very good friend, the fantasy hockey robot, Brian Com.
Hello, Elon. Hello, everyone. It's great to be back. And yeah, one of the beauty things about this time of year is we don't have to look a month into the future, and we also don't have to look a month into the past necessarily. Like it's a lot less relevant. It's still relevant, but it's not as relevant when there's just so few weeks remaining of the fantasy hockey season. There's just 2 more weeks left in the Cupful season. And by the way, just let me give a quick shout out to all of our Tier 1 Sweden Cupful competitors. You can see this, by the way, kkupfl.com. Click on standings, click on the beautiful logo done by Edward Swan. We'll put a link in the show notes. He's a graphic designer, he does great work. He made a custom logo for our Sweden division, and you can see who's duking it out for the title of the ultimate Cupful champion. Like, the world's best fantasy hockey player is in the process of being decided, and it's so much fun to track. So we've got Marcus, who's in first. Longtime listeners will remember he hosted the Stat Attack a while ago. He crushed the league again, led the league with 15 wins out of 21 weeks, barely, did not use a lot of moves relative to the rest of the league, did not use a lot of fab relative to the rest of the league. He's just quietly doing his thing after a killer draft. So he had the first bye. Jordan has another bye, has the other bye in the division, who also, this is his third try at winning the Cupful championship. So we'll see if he can. I think this might already be the furthest he's gotten, or at least as far as he's gotten before. And we have 2 matchups that are going on right now. One with BrandonWeeb.com, who you hear we shout him out at the end of every show because he does a lot of graphic design work for us. He lost to Harrison in the week going into the Cupful playoffs. So got Harrison into the playoffs, and Brandon lost his bye because he lost that matchup. And unfortunately for Brandon, they met up in the first round, and it looks like Harrison, the 6th seed, is going to knock out Brandon, the 3rd seed, although they were only 1 win apart in the standings in the first matchup. So Harrison's going to go on to the semifinals. And then in the other first round matchup, we had Lori from Finland, and we had Ryan, who's our fast track winner from last season. So Ryan, in his first year in the Cupful, he started in tier 6. He got the most points out of anybody in the entire Keeping Karlsson Ultimate Patron Fantasy League, and that gets you a free ticket to the top tier. It's like, okay, well, he hasn't played in tier 3 or tier 2 before, or tier 1, an advantage a lot of people in our top tier have. Doesn't matter. He's on his way to the semifinals too. He's going to play in the next round against Jordan, it looks like. And Mark is going to get Harrison. So we've got 1 versus 6 and 2 versus 4 coming up in the semis. We'll keep everyone posted. But a hearty congratulations to everybody who's in the Cupful Tier 1 playoffs, and everyone who's not. You're all awesome too. I'm talking Tier 1, talking all the way through. We've got exit surveys. Even you, Elon.
Even 13th place in Tier 1?
I was there in Tier 3 for a few weeks this year, and I'm fighting right now to stay in Tier 3. I need to win the consolation bracket. I had to buy this week. Anyway, enough about me. Congrats to all the Cupful competitors. It was an amazing season. Still is for some of you. If you're still, we're going to send out exit surveys to collect feedback on the season, so stay tuned for that. And we'll have our playoff pool coming up soon, which is totally different and fun, but more on that, I don't know, at the end of the show. How about that? Because it's probably about time that we got into some fantasy news.
Yeah, I mean, this is the most important fantasy news. Who's going to be the ultimate Cupful champion? But yeah, good luck to everyone in your semifinals and finals, and we'll see if we can give you some tips. My plan, Brian, for this episode, I wanted to start with cold streaks. Actually, I want to start by saying we're presented by DobberHockey.com, a really awesome fantasy website that we're proud to say. And I use the tools of Frozen Tools all the time to prep the show. Aside from DobberHockey.com, I want to start with just a bunch of cold streaks of players that normally I would know your answer. I would just say Brian, this guy's cold. You'd be like, don't worry about it. He'll be fine. You're not going to drop, X player. But I've got some guys on cold streaks who I feel like we need to know, if you are going into a matchup next week, if you listen to Matchup Maximizer yesterday that I recorded, next week is a very interesting fantasy week. You got very busy Tuesday, Thursday, Saturdays, and then very light off days. So I guess kind of typical, but those busy days are super busy. So if you have a guy that's just playing Tuesday, Thursday, Saturday, there's a good chance that if he's cold, you might just want to end up putting him on your bench. And at that point, you might already want to think of dropping him for one of these off day guys to get more games. So Brian, I'm going to start with some defensemen. There's a lot of really high end defensemen that we're all super cold. And I want to start in Carolina with both of their main guys, actually. Brent Burns, who overall, I feel like the last time I talked to you, we were talking about this great season Brent Burns has been having. But now all of a sudden, only 1 point in his last 5 games. He got an assist in the game on Saturday versus Philadelphia in the 5-4 win. But before that, he was pointless in 4 games. Also, if you look at Burns's peripherals, like only 1 or 2 shots in each of his last 3 games. Like a lot of games with no hits. I'm looking at 1, 0 or 2 blocks. Like he's really not bringing it when people needed him most. And you'd think, okay, well that must mean Shane Gostisbehere is pulling up the slack. Gostisbehere has been terrible. Like he got traded. He had a huge game. He had a goal and 2 assists in a game against Tampa Bay, like in one of his first games with the Canes. After that, like nothing, all the way to again, in his game versus Philly, he also got an assist, which was his first point after going pointless in 6. Once again, Brian, the defenseman to roster in Carolina over these past couple of weeks has been our friend Brady Shea. He's the only one getting points from the back end there. He has 5 points his last 3 games, goals in 3 straight. So if you are in a situation where you have Burns and or Gostisbehere, is it time to just move on and not, put your semifinals in their hands?
I wouldn't move on from Brent Burns. We went into him a couple weeks ago. Was it when I was looking at his numbers and just blown away at how exactly similar they were to Shane Gostisbehere's? Nope. I'll just do it again. When we talked about Brent Burns last, it was a couple weeks ago, and I was marveling at how similar Brent Burns' numbers were to Tony DeAngelo's. And so I actually, when DeAngelo was in Carolina, Brent Burns is basically doing the same thing, doing it a little better than DeAngelo, shooting a bit more too, some nice volume there. But because I'm gonna, usually I'm like, well, Brent Burns has been doing this for a while now, so we're not going to overreact to a small snap. But I'm going to add on to that. Not only has Brent Burns been doing this all season in Carolina, producing at a 60, 65 point pace, but someone in his position, in his role, has been doing it now for at least the last 2 years. So I'm going to say I'm not too concerned about the points disappearing. I am a little concerned about the shots disappearing, though. This is definitely one of the lower volume stretches he's had this season. There have been a few times this season where he's gone a few games and only where there's been a stretch of 3 or 4 games where Brent Burns has only averaged, say, 2 shots a game or 1.5 or somewhere in that neighborhood instead of the 3 shots per game that he's averaging overall, which, by the way, is still an increase over the last 2 seasons that Burns played in San Jose. So I'm willing to wait and see how long this goes for. It hasn't gone longer than 3 or 4 games so far this season when Brent Burns has stopped shooting. So I'm not expecting it to happen this time around. And the blocking and hitting, Elon, I don't see a real break in pattern for him either. Although, he seems to be a little blocking less over the last month or so. His block numbers look the way they did at the start of the season. In the middle, he was more successful there. So it's a bit of a bummer that he leaves you now, but I also think the points will come back. Shane Gostisbehere, I would be ready to move on from him. He got all 6 seconds with Brent Burns of a 6-on-4 power play for Carolina in the last game. That was it. The Hurricanes had 6 seconds of power play time. But aside from that, Gostisbehere has generally been on the second unit. We noted when Gostisbehere came to the Hurricanes, he put up 4 power play points from the second unit in his first 2 games. We're like, yeah, that's not going to happen. That second unit power play production, it's not how it works. And sure enough, it hasn't. But on top of that, Gostisbehere is barely shooting. He went 4 straight games with 0 or 1 shots on goal. He finally put up 2 shots on goal for the first time in over a week against Philly on Saturday. But that's not enough to me to think that I need, he might be a good stream at this point, but Shane Gostisbehere outside of that, I'm not sure he's someone I'm holding on tight to. One thing that's hurting both these guys, by the way, Elon, is that the Canes are just 2 for 16 on the power play. Their power play has gone ice cold over the last 10 or 11 days. That's about 7 games worth. And that's going to hurt everybody, especially the power play quarterbacks who depend on that power play to get their points.
Well, yeah, and obviously it doesn't help that Andrei Svechnikov is out for the rest of the season. Obviously, he's a big part of that power play. Yeah, at this point, I'm with you. Gostisbehere, get out of here. I would rather have Brady Shea at this point than Gostisbehere if I want to have a Canes defenseman. I guess I'm with you with Brent Burns, though kind of frustrating for him to let you down. But I think I'm with you that I'd probably hold on to Burns. And it is 4 games next week. There, like 3 of them are on the busy days. But, for defense, sometimes you can fit someone in. But yeah, Brady Shea, obviously, he won't keep this up forever. He's not getting power play time, but at least he's shooting, which Gostisbehere, like you said, is not. Regarding the Svechnikov injury, obviously, it was talked about on the Short Shifts episodes this week. Great job by Jeremy, Lewis, and Shams for those shows. But yeah, like now we have some updates on the lines. And in that game versus Philly that we were just talking about with I had it here the whole time. Sorry. Okay. With Svechnikov out, let's take a look at the lines from that game versus Philly. And yeah, so they've been rolling with Aho, Necas, and Martinuk as one line. And then Teravainen went to play with Puljujarvi and Jordan Staal. Like, this is already a big change from before, where Puljujarvi at one point was playing with Aho and Teravainen. So yeah, they completely swapped things around. Like, this really just they look a lot less deep, right? And by the way, Aho was on a big cold streak before finally like breaking out this game against Philly. And this is Philly, right? So I don't know if we should say like, oh, the cold streak's for sure over. Maybe Carolina's gonna have some problems. So yeah, overall, I'd be kind of worried. Like, I want to like give a silver lining and be like, the typical like, oh, someone's injured, someone might get like a bump now. You might be interested in the person who gets on that top power play. For what it's worth, in that last game, looks like Jordan Staal got some power play time. It was only 6 seconds, so maybe he gets up there potentially. I guess you can wait and see. But I think this is one of those things where it's kind of just bad for everyone, except for. It's not bad or good for him, but just Martin Necas continues to roll. He's got now points in 3 straight games. He like went cold for like the smallest little bit, but overall this like miracle season for Necas just continues. 64 points in 68 games now, 77-point pace. So yeah, I guess he hasn't been too affected by Svechnikov being injured, but aside from him, yeah, not great over in Carolina right now.
No, not great at all. I'll throw. Well, what's interesting, one, I don't think I've ever seen the entire like third line, Fast, Martinuk, and Staal, all playing on different lines. So I think that's one reason why things look so different. And like you said, Elon, minus Svechnikov, and don't forget Max Pacioretty. Canes, I wouldn't say they look shallow, but they definitely look more spread out. I think they still have a solid top 9. And I will point out one name who might have success down the stretch, and you won't be too surprised to hear this from me, Elon. I'll just shout out Jesse Puljujarvi, who has no points as a Hurricane so far, but in his last 2 games, he has 7 shots and 8 hits, which aren't bad numbers. He's still not getting like great deployment. Like, his minutes at 5-on-5 aren't very high. No power play deployment that's really meaningful at all. But if he's playing with Teravainen and Jordan Staal, or anywhere in that group of 9, there's a chance. I'd slot him ahead of past favorite Jordan Martinuk for starters. But Jesse Puljujarvi, I'll just at least mention shots and hits. If those might help you in a category, then he might be of use to you next week.
Yeah, I definitely won't be surprised if he puts up a cardio game in his next game. He has 0 shots. Like, I'm going to need a lot to regain any faith in Puljujarvi. He's been playing with McDavid at times and not doing anything. So it's not like I'm going to be like, oh, he's with Teravainen and Martinuk.
Yeah, but with McDavid, like, he was never really like, we still don't know what he can do, right? Like, we never got the sense that he was being fully given the opportunity to play the way he'd like to play, or to really have some run and try out some new things. And like you said, Elon, we're not very far from a cardio. Like, his first few games in Carolina, unremarkable. I'm just mentioning in case, like, in a deep enough league, they said like shots, hits. I hope those continue. If they don't, of course, forget it. But if they do, that's great. And there is at least a chance at a point while he's in the mix.
I guess. Okay. By the way, Patty wanted us to talk about, since we're on Carolina, Petr Kochetkov. He got called up with Ronta injured. People got excited for good reason. He's really not been the same. Remember at one point earlier in the year, he was like running the league. He was one of the top goalies. He was getting shutouts. He was having 1 goal against games. He was looking amazing. Kochetkov has really come back to earth. He had led in 5 goals in the last game versus Toronto. In his previous games, he led in 3. He did have a shutout actually against Philly of all teams, but he only stopped 19 in that game. But before that, he had 3 goals against. And if you keep on going back, 4 goals against, it's been a while aside from games against Philadelphia where Kochetkov has been valuable. So at this point, Frederik Andersen is back, and I really don't think Carolina has a reason to like go to Kochetkov very often. So, there's a back-to-back at the end of the weekend, but it's not like that amazing looking like, oh my God, you got to circle that day on your calendar to get that spot start from Kochetkov, because he's kind of struggled lately.
Agree. Yeah, and I will. If I'm looking for the silver lining, Kochetkov, when he came up the first time, he had a great game against Chicago. Struggled a little bit to find his footing, and then went on the tear that he was able to make his name and stay up with the Canes and be a legit fantasy option for a long time because of it. But I think it's a good observation, Elon, that it has been a while since Kochetkov has been consistently good. In his last 7 decisions, just a single win and 1 shootout loss and 5 regulation losses. A lot of, as you mentioned, 3s and 4s and even a 5 in the goals against column for Kochetkov. So Anderson's the one, but it still wouldn't surprise me if the Canes flip back and forth pretty regularly between the two, because Anderson's an injury risk once he starts playing too much. And I'm sure they'd rather have both goalies sharp and in game shape heading into the postseason.
Yeah, I guess anything could happen. Goalies are impossible to predict, of course. But yeah, too bad. It was like a really exciting rookie season for him before this stretch. Let's go to Buffalo now, Brian. So again, we're looking at D to start. Really cold, high-end defenseman. And maybe I should have even started here. Rasmus Dahlin. What the heck? Dahlin was having an insane season. He had 63 points in 57 games at one point. And then after that, 63 points in 58 games, 59 games, 60 games. He's now 8 games in a row without a point. Dahlin just went from just getting points or even multiple points, like basically every game, and now like has totally disappeared. I've been seeing some people on Twitter speculating. I wonder if Dahlin is potentially injured. He was potentially going to miss time. Then I guess he didn't. Like he did miss a little bit of time right at the end of February. So he might be nursing something. I don't know what's going on. All I know is that if you want points, you're not getting them out of Dahlin. So Brian, like looking at Buffalo, they are one of these teams that only play 3 times next week, Tuesday, and then you're waiting all the way till Friday, Saturday. Would it be so insane for like in a 1-year league to be like, maybe you need to move on from Rasmus Dahlin?
No, yeah, that would be insane. How could you move on from Rasmus? Like, I get it. We're in like the shortest of short-term thinking. It's survive or your season's over. So I get it. And in dire straits, and you really don't see a tomorrow without making this move, go ahead. All right. You can make the move. You have permission. Of course you do. But Rasmus Dahlin is still on the top power play. He's still getting all the ice we were used to seeing. I can't, Elon. I'm sorry.
Okay, no, that's fair. I probably couldn't either, but it's just like, I'd be really frustrated because what if he is actually injured? Remember that year? Who was it? Couture was like having an insane season. All of a sudden he just disappeared. And then it turned out afterwards that he actually had an injury. And it's like, if I would have known, I would have just dropped him a lot earlier. And like Dahlin's even doing better than Couture did like a couple seasons ago. But like, if he's not 100%, but of course, like you say, he's still getting the good deployment.
He just took 7 shots in the last game.
That's a nice, okay. That's enough for me. Okay. If he didn't do that, I would have been more worried. He's going to play Nashville again on Tuesday. Nashville just led in like 6 goals against the Rangers. That game's actually still 7 goals now. Did you know Lankinen, my boy, who I'm always like standing up for, led in 4 goals on 5 shots before getting pulled. But it's not even his fault. Now you can see that even Saros is struggling. So yeah, maybe this will be a game for Dahlin to finally do something. But yeah, pretty surprising. Of course, to make things even more complicated with Dahlin cold, Owen Power has stepped up. He actually has 4 points in his last 4 games. So I don't know. Like he's still on the second power play. I'm not like especially more interested in Owen Power right now, but I think that's something I just wanted to bring up. And then one last thing on the Sabres that I'll mention is that a very high pedigree and much anticipated prospect, Devon Levy, was called up from college. And like the timing is good because UPL just put up a stinker in his last game. And, it's not like Craig Anderson or Eric Comrie have been especially good. And like the news came that Levy's going to be like on the team, like for the rest of the season. So they have like 4 goalies right now. I have no idea what Buffalo is doing, but I wouldn't be surprised if Levy just, we'll see how he does, right? Like Hofer just came in, or is it Hofer on St. Louis just came in and played a couple games with Binnington out. And, Levy, I feel, is like a higher pedigree guy than that. I don't know. I think that it's possible if he does well that he can end up getting the majority of the starts moving forward. But obviously that's just speculation.
Total speculation, but if they're going to bring him onto the team, they're probably, I think it's not a bad guess, although, when the Sabres are already carrying so many goalies, it's hard to imagine, but none of those goalies have been doing well at all. Like Eric Comrie, the last we saw of him, he gave up 10 goals against Dallas. Craig Anderson has lost 3 of his last 4 while being sub 900 in 3 of those 4. And Ukko-Pekka Luukkonen has won just 2 of his last 10, picked up a loser point 3 times, but that's not good. And an 887 save percentage down the stretch. Like, this is where you can make the case. Remember, Luokkanen wasn't even one of the starting 2 at the beginning of the year. It was like, hey, don't worry, you're still our goalie of the future. Then Comrie got injured, which necessitated UPL being called up. But you'd think this is an opportunity. And usually, again, this is when Buffalo is starting to look to next season and say, what do we have here? And, well, we have, do you know how to pronounce his name, Elon?
Which one? Devon Levy?
Yeah, is that it?
I don't know.
Are you confident?
No, I'm not that confident, but someone will correct us. If not, we'll get it right next week. You don't even have to look it up, Brian. Let's keep it rolling. Let's go.
Okay.
Levy. It's Levi. It's probably Levy.
Okay, well, so let me say it. I don't have a pronunciation.
I have to edit point. Okay.
Oh.
So then just go back from when you asked me so that you don't even ask me and just say it then.
Okay. Do you even know how to pronounce it?
No, I don't. I'm guessing. I'm reading it.
No, I was saying I was just saying that
was for the
come out of the
okay.
Yeah.
But you were just asking me again.
Yeah.
Like as if I looked it up in a second. Okay.
Devon Levy, the door is open. So I don't know if we're going to see starts. Total speculation. But why not? If 3 goalies aren't working for you, Buffalo, why not see what the 4th can do? Coming off a nice college year for Levy, 933 save percentage and 34 appearances for Northeastern of the Hockey East Division 1 team.
Yeah, like everything I read, about like prospect goalies, whenever I'm like looking up top prospect goalies to see if any of my goalies in my dynasty league are on the list, spoiler, they never are, but he's always at the top of the list. So I think that Levy is the real deal, according to a lot of people. All right, Brian. So we still have I've got 4 more defensemen that I think are rostered in pretty much all leagues that are ice cold. So we're going to get to them and a lot more after the break. So we'll be back soon. You're listening to Keeping Karlsson. Okay, we are back, Brian, for part 2 of part 1, period 2 of part 1, I guess. Period 2 of the doubleheader of the first game. And I'm going next to Boston, and they just destroyed the Buffalo Sabres today, 7-0. Like I said, Luokkanen, not a good game. I wonder if he's not going to play again for a little while. So the defenseman I was going to bring up actually did have a good game today. So kind of taking the wind out of this take. Charlie McAvoy was super cold going into today, had been pointless in quite a number of games, and had also lost that top power play. But yeah, it was 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 games in a row that McAvoy didn't get a single point, and even had a couple games in a row with no points and no shots, which is really a bummer. Today versus Buffalo, McAvoy was continuing to do nothing all the way until halfway through the 3rd period, where he finally decided, all right, and he passed to Charlie Coyle, who scored a goal, and then he scored a goal himself with a couple minutes left. I don't know, might be score effects. I'm not going to read too much into it. I'm going to consider still Charlie McAvoy someone I'm pretty concerned about, especially because he wasn't on the top power play today. Both of those were even strength points. Today, it was Hampus Lindholm on the top power play, but that's because Dmitry Orlov was getting a game off, not because of injury. Apparently, Buffalo is doing some sort of rotation with their defensemen where everyone has to take a turn getting a day off. So I don't know if this is anything to read into in terms of Hampus Lindholm versus Orlov. All I know is that McAvoy has been off the top power play, and that makes me very concerned. Obviously, things can change. If this was like earlier in the season, I'd be like, hold on to McAvoy. He'll probably get it back at some point. At this point, I don't know. If he's not getting PP1 and if he's not pointing, and I'm not counting these last couple goals versus Buffalo, I'd be very concerned. So Brian, I'll ask you the same questions I did for the other ones, seeing if I could get a hit here. Charlie McAvoy, is he someone you would let go? Boston does play 4 times next week at least, and they start versus Ottawa and Montreal, so you think they might be able to score some goals. But yeah, once you get to the weekend, Tampa Bay and Carolina. So I don't know. What do you think about Charlie McAvoy right now?
Yeah, it's not promising. And anybody who's had the McAvoy's wind in their sails up to this point is feeling abandoned by McAvoy's lack of production in most categories. Although, how about those 7 blocks the other night? Hey, that's not a bad way to get some kind of production from Charlie McAvoy, but it's clearly not what you're looking for. And Elon, you mentioned, if you asked me earlier in the season, if McAvoy was off the top power play, we'd hold. And I look back, and that's what we did, right? He was off the top power play for about 7 or 8 games, which is about as long as he's been off the top power play now. And in those 7 or 8 games, he also shot very little, pointed very rarely. And so I'm hoping that this is just a mirror of that, where now, okay, we've run our course of the 7 games of McAvoy off the top power play. Also, Boston is a good enough team that even if McAvoy isn't on the top power play, I still expect him to luck into a few more points than he has so far. Like, Boston has scored 3 or more goals in their last 6 games, including, well, he got 2 points on the 7 goals. So not even including today. In the 5 games before that, Boston had 3 or more goals in their last 5 and had 3 or more goals in 8 of their last 9. Like, this is a team that puts up 3 goals a night for starters. That's how they begin the night in Boston. So just by pure being there, Charlie McAvoy should be doing better than he is. And I think that he hasn't, is mostly bad luck. So if you see him dropped, yeah, I'd be all over that. I would be happy to take the risk. Unlike Shane Gostisbehere, if he was dropped in my div, I would just leave him be. But Charlie McAvoy, of course, is in a different class. And I would be very happy to go and get him if somebody else did make the mistake of dropping him.
Wow. Okay. I don't know. I guess I'm not as high for this season, actually. Like, if someone else dropped him, I would, and if I already had like defensemen, you know, like, let's say if my like D spots were already filled for Tuesday, Thursday, Saturday, so I'm not even gaining games until potentially that Sunday game, I think I'd probably take a streamer versus jumping on McAvoy at this point while he's not on the top power play.
Sure, but who's your bottom defenseman in that scenario?
Yeah.
Like,
well,
is it like Jake Wallman? Yeah.
Well, yeah, if it's Jake Wallman, then
you drop Jake Wallman.
Depends who the forward options are. Like, maybe I'm dropping Jake Wallman either way, and maybe I'm adding Brady Shea. I don't know. Like, yeah. Because I don't like, you know me, Brian, also, I'm like very simple, and like, I don't like the guys who don't shoot a lot, and he hasn't been shooting a lot lately, and that bums me out. So that would be another reason I'd be a little apprehensive.
Yeah, understandably so. And like, this has not been a great shooting season for McAvoy, period. Like, you shouldn't have been expecting shots all the way through. He's taken like 1.5 shots per game through the year, a step back from last year when he was shooting a little bit more, but the production is still there. In fact, it's higher than last year. So I think McAvoy should be back on track. And I know power play 1 is a big part of that production. It's a bummer every game he's off it, but I don't think he's going to end the season off the top unit. That's my bold and fearless prediction.
Maybe. But of course, if it's not next week, then no one cares because they'll be eliminated by the time he gets back on.
Good point. These are the tricky calls you've got to make in fantasy hockey playoff time.
And who are we to even say? We're just presenting the information, giving a quick take. It's going to be up to you. If you're listening and you're still in your playoffs, I said this on Matchup Maximizer yesterday. It's like, you probably know what you're doing for the most part, or else you wouldn't be in the semifinals. So, you know, we're giving you something to think about, but I trust you, the listener, to make the right call. While we're on Boston, you know, everyone's been talking about Linus Ullmark all season, and why not? He's had like an incredible year, might be the front runner for the Vezina at this point, but not out of nowhere, actually. No, I don't even say that. I'm going to say like out of, okay. But all of a sudden, his partner in crime, Jeremy Swayman, 2 shutouts this week. If you were going to ask me going into the week, which Boston goalie do you want for a critical week for you, I probably would have said, you know, go with Ullmark. And it's not like he was bad. Like, Boston won 5-2 with him in net versus Minnesota. But the guy who probably won people their weeks almost single-handedly, Swayman shut out the Winnipeg Jets, stopping 36. And then today he shut out the Bruins, stopping 26. Great job. Or not, shut out the Sabres, stopping 26. So Boston is very set in goal. It's like, you know, if Ullmark got injured, that would obviously be terrible, but like, they'd be fine. Like, Swayman seems like a really amazing goalie.
They are very fortunate. There are lots of NHL teams who have struggled to find a goalie. We just talked about one in Buffalo, and Boston's had 2, and there hasn't even been, you know, lengthy struggles from either one. Swayman was a little rough to start, which of course gave Ullmark those big opportunities at the start of the year, but they have been trading starts like clockwork since December. And that's one thing, like the start of December. And that's one privilege, I guess, you have if your team starts off so freaking hot as the Boston Bruins did, that your basically fate has already been decided and you can afford to just roll both goalies no matter what each is doing on a given night. But that's also to say neither one has faltered enough to not get that start basically every other night since early December. So they're in a really great place going into the playoffs and not in danger of being in dire straits should one goalie go down, which, touch wood, right? I don't mean to jinx anything into existence.
All right. Next up, in terms of cold defensemen, we're going to Chicago. Seth Jones was holding his own pretty well as the team was just getting more and more decimated, getting rid of everybody. But I guess it's got to catch up to you eventually. And Seth Jones, after going on a nice run at the start of March where he scored in 3 straight games, is now pointless in 6. So I wonder if, Brian, this is going to be the one where you say, and it could be none. Like these are all high-end defensemen that are like really disappointing to be cold right in your fantasy playoffs. But yeah, so now at this point with Chicago playing also 4 times next week, and actually they even get a game on Monday and on Sunday. So there's 2 off-day games along with Thursday and Saturday. Is Seth Jones someone that you think will be able to bounce back here, or is it just like Chicago's so random? Like we don't, like I could even ask after this. I'm going to ask you. I'll just do it now. Like who is the forward you want? And like every week it changes. Like I don't even know who. Like there's not even like one name that jumps out. Usually on a team there's at least one guy. Like in Arizona you go well Clayton Keller and Schmaltz, and then who knows? But yeah, with Chicago it's like Taylor Radish. Lucas Reichel. I don't even know. It's just like I usually just say, but I just know that Seth Jones is the one like skater that you want. And now I don't even know that because he's ice cold.
Yeah, and I think he is someone you can drop. There's nothing left in Chicago. Last one out, I guess, was Patrick Kane. The lights are still on, but nobody's home now for the Blackhawks. They've lost. Sorry, they've lost 7. Nope. They've lost 8 of their last 11 games and have not looked good doing it. Just 28 goals over that span. So about 2.5 goals per night. The power play is just 5 for 35 in this stretch. And if I took out one more game, then they'd be even worse. They'd be 3 for 31. So like things are not good in Chicago, and namely Elon, because I don't think there is anyone left to score. So do I want the power play 1 quarterback on a power play 1 that features, do you want to try naming them? You could probably name the top unit
on Chicago.
Yeah.
I mean, off the top of my head, I have it open right here. Unfortunately,
Brian.
Okay.
All right. Well, now we've given time for the listener to know that Tyler Johnson, Jason Dickinson, Boris Kachuk, and Taylor Radish are on the top power play. So do I want, that's a power play 2 for me. And sure, they're getting that's a power play 4 for me, if I'm being honest. And yeah, they get power play 1 time, and that could help Seth Jones, but if he's not helping you this week, although Chicago does have 4 games, but I still wouldn't be that, I wouldn't be clinging on. Like if I had Jones and McAvoy, even with Jones on the top unit, I would hold McAvoy ahead of Jones, even though, yeah, Jones might shoot a little more, might block a little more, might have a lucky hit night. I would still go with McAvoy over Seth Jones.
Yeah, it's a bummer. And I think Seth Jones, he's making lots of money, so I don't know how upset he is, but I think when he signed that long-term contract with Chicago, he didn't expect it to go this sideways so quickly. But they have a lot of good prospects, and they're going to have more now after all these trades. So maybe in a few years, maybe at the end of his career, Seth Jones can get another playoff game in.
Do you know, even like Seth Jones, he doesn't have an assist in his last 11 games. His last 4 points have all been goals. And like, if I go back further, he has 3 assists in his last 23 games. He has more goals than assists over the last 2 months, which is not normal for a defenseman, especially a power play quarterback. Just speaks to how little offense there is to get in on. If Seth Jones isn't scoring, he's not pointing. And I don't expect him to score or points a whole lot the rest of the way.
Yeah. All right, let's go now to the Islanders. Noah Dobson also was having like a really great season, like similar to Dahlin. And then all of a sudden it just kind of went away. And though lately, actually, he does have an assist in each of his last couple games. So maybe we're at a point now where you'll say that you're a little bit higher on Dobson than you would have been before, this week. But overall, like the shots aren't as high as they used to be. Like in that last game versus San Jose, where the Islanders won 4-1, Dobson did pick up an assist, not on the power play. He only took 1 shot, had no hits and 1 block. So it's like, an okay game, but nothing like to get too excited about. And Dobson was someone who was looking like he could be like a 60+ point defenseman for a lot of the season. I think like the Islanders, there's a lot of people you could say this about, like in terms of people that were looking really good. Specifically also Bo Horvat came over and was looking like really just like he'll be able to keep up somewhat what he was doing in Vancouver. Matt Barzal got injured, and it really seems like the offense has disappeared since then. The lines are weird. We'll talk more about the forwards in a second, but looking at Dobson, he doesn't have a power play point in like 6 games, and he's the top power play quarterback. So yeah, I don't know, Brian, how confident are you that Noah Dobson can get back to producing like he was before?
Well, before like how far before are we going? Are we going back to the second half of last year? Or are we going
Well, let's say, let me put it this way. He started the season with 15 points in 23 games.
Okay.
Like, he started the season looking like this guy. If you drafted him, you were a brilliant genius. Like he's the breakout Israel from the second half of last year. And now lately with like sans Matt Barzal, it doesn't seem like it's been the same.
You will outside of that early run, it's been like a pretty pedestrian season for Dobson. Like there have been nice periods where he's produced, but there have also been stretches where he hasn't, and it's all sort of equaled out to a half point per game kind of player outside of that early run for Noah Dobson. It's a smidge above a half point per game. But what's interesting here is that Noah Dobson's numbers this year look exactly the same as they did last year. Like he's producing in all the same ways. He's shooting a little bit more on the power play. So he's got that going for him, even though he's pointing a little less on the power play. So he doesn't have that going for him. But on the whole, like if you look at last year, Noah Dobson started slow, picked it up strong, ended up with 52-point pace. This year, he started strong and then went back to, or then he slowed down and he's on a 49-point pace. So maybe this is who Noah Dobson is. And maybe that 60-point upside, that potential is there, but not in a sustained way, given a situation. Now that I'm seeing the numbers evening out from both of the last seasons, this one and the one before, where he had a hot stretch and then he had a stretch where he wasn't so hot. And seeing that, yeah, maybe this 50-point version of Dobson is basically the balance. And sometimes he'll run hot, and sometimes he'll run cold. And that it's disappointing, right? We were expecting more, and I still think the upside is there for beyond. But if you're asking me whether I think Dobson is going to get back to a 60-point scoring pace before the season's done, no, I don't. Or even like over the course of the rest of the season starting today, no, I'd say he's going to be closer to 50 than 60.
Yeah, and it could be even less. Yeah, depending on how potent the Islanders can be, if they could get a power play point at some point. So yeah, that's a shame, and we'll have to see. We actually had a question from Auntie in our Discord server, our patron only Discord server, very exclusive, unless you pay $5, and then you could actually get in. Anyone could get in. So he was asking. He said he wants to drop a defenseman, and it's either going to be Dobson or Rasmus Sandin over on Washington. And Sandin has been like good still, like he's still been on the top power play. He just had a power play assist in today's game versus Minnesota. He also had an assist in the previous game. Like overall, we're looking at 11 points in his last 8 games for Rasmus Sandin. So he's piling on the assists. But of course, news has come out that John Karlsson could be back soon. Like, okay, if you look at a quote from an article from yesterday, who, by the way, like they went into the injury, he had like a skull fracture. He had a severed temporal artery, like really bad from blocking that shot with his head. Like, sucks. But apparently he's fine and like he's going to play soon. And his quote was, "I would like to play soon. That's my goal." That's what from earlier on had in mind. I think the major hurdles are behind me. Certainly, I think my expectations would be to play soon. I'm talking about John Karlsson here. So if John Karlsson comes back, you'd expect that isn't good for Sandin, since Sandin would be bumped from the top power play. Though I don't know if that's guaranteed. Also, I don't know when this John Karlsson return will be. It seems like it's somewhat imminent, but it also doesn't seem like it's like next game. So Brian, if you have Sandin and Dobson and you want to drop one of them, which is the one that you're holding at this point, knowing that you only care about the next couple weeks?
I'm going to drop Noah Dobson. I'm going to go ahead and do it. The one edge Dobson has over Sandin is in shots. All right. Dobson is still shooting like a reasonable amount. Like he's averaging almost 3 shots per game on the season. And unlike McAvoy, those shots haven't gone away with the lack of production or with the decreased production. Whereas Sandin, he's shooting a little more since he got to Washington, and he shot a little more on his way out of Toronto as perhaps he was being showcased. I'm not sure why all of a sudden his shot on goal numbers went up, but maybe if you're lucky, you get 2 shots per game. It's like McAvoy-like shooting from Sandin, which is worse than what you could get from Dobson. So that would be the reason to keep Dobson over Sandin, is if you really value those shots on goal. But hey, I value points and scoring, and Sandin is doing exactly that with Washington. He's been on a great run, 3 multi-point games already. I guess maybe I'll put out the one thing I worry about. We never look at plus minus, but Sandin is a minus 11 in his last 4 games. He's been a minus 2 in each of his last 4. And I just worry that those are the kind of numbers that coach pulls a privilege from because of that. And Sandin has been somewhat maligned in the past for some of his defensive flaws. So that would be something I'd be keeping an eye on. And of course, the return of John Karlsson, who, I mean, that's the $1 million question here, right? I think you said maybe Karlsson doesn't step onto the top power play. I think he does. I think when he's healthy, maybe he plays a game or 2 to find his feet, and then he gets back on the top unit. At that point, Sandin is completely worthless to you. But if you're just looking on a day-to-day basis, have to survive, one day at a time. I am taking Sandin over Dobson. What about you?
It's a really tough one because, of course, you said like if you need shots, then go with Dobson. But if you want points, go with Sandin. But it's like sometimes shots go in the net and turn into goals, which are very good. Of course,
but rarely for defensemen,
happened.
like only 5 or 6 out of 100 times.
Yeah, I guess it's supposed to be then like that. There's a rebound sometimes, and then someone scores, and you get the assist from that. Like he should be getting more points, you would think. But yeah, I think until Sandin loses the top power play, I think I will also take Sandin. And that's more just also, I just think the Islanders, I'm really excited for next year for them. I want to see Horvat and Barzal back together again and see if that like makes that power play good, which helps Dobson, which helps a lot of people. But yeah, it's a bummer. Like I really don't like this Barzal injury. I feel like now people are going to be mean to Bo Horvat, who like, I don't care. Like, I don't know if he's a good person or not, but I just feel like you can't judge the Islanders right now for having paid a lot for Bo Horvat because things were actually looking really good before Barzal got injured. So I think we just kind of have to put it on hold right now. Maybe Horvat becomes like a good sleeper pick in drafts next year, assuming everyone's healthy. I think he'll do a lot better than he's been doing lately, which is absolutely nothing. Yeah. Don't get me wrong. Like I'd consider dropping Horvat potentially. I'll just throw it out there.
Yeah, but we also knew, I mean, no one thought, no one said that Horvat was going to go this cold. He hasn't scored a goal in 8 games this year, which is his longest goalless drought of the season. And he's been shooting in those 8 games. He has 28 shots. So that's like 3.5 shots per game in that stretch. And he's a good shooter. So generally, we could expect 15% of those to go in, which is not a bad, outcome at all. So Horvat is getting a little snake bit here. But we also knew that he was clicking along at a 20+% shooting success rate for a long time. So we knew that was going to stop. It's just come to such a screeching halt. And he was so strong for so long before, like he held up that unsustainable number for so long that it really comes as a shock when Horvat finally has slowed down. So I expect the goals to return at some point. This isn't going to be, it would be unlucky for this goalless drought to continue much longer, but I would still expect maybe, a goal every 3 or 4 games instead of like a goal every other game, which is what he was doing for a good chunk of the season.
Yeah, no. Who's he playing with? Like, if you look at the lines over on the Islanders, we have guys like Pierre Engvall randomly like getting up in the top 6 and actually doing kind of well. Like, so Horvat in the last game was playing with Lee and Simon Holmstrom, and then Engvall is playing with Nelson and Kyle Palmieri. So yeah, like Horvat is not getting that primo deploymento. Engvall, I will mention, has 5 points now in his last 4 games. If you want to take a shot on someone that I have like no faith in continuing his hot streak, then Engvall, yeah, is also getting power play time. So, definitely a better opportunity here than he had over in Toronto. Okay, Brian, next we're going to go to your favorite team to talk about a defense that I really did not expect him to go cold like this. And we'll get to him and them in just a sec. You're listening to Keeping Karlsson. Welcome back, everybody, to the third period of the first game of the doubleheader of this mega show in the week going into the Cupful semifinals and a lot of playoff matchups for a lot of the listeners. So hopefully we've been giving you some good tips so far. I want to go next. We're talking about cold defensemen, and we're going to do one more. Like I said right before the break, I didn't expect to be saying this or to be saying that the Ottawa Senators would all of a sudden be on a 5-game losing streak and basically falling out of the playoffs. Like, they traded for Jacob Chychrun, and I was like, oh my God, this team, and they were like hot. They were doing so well. I was like, they're going to take a run at the playoffs. This is so fun. And then ever since then, just a total implosion. And Chychrun himself like hasn't helped. He's pointless in 5 games. He's taking a lot of shots. I know Brian's going to say he's taking a lot of shots. Maybe at some point, some of them will go in, but at the same time, like, I don't know. Like, and also like Gostisbehere, Chychrun had a couple good games early in his tenure with the Sens. He had a couple goal and assist games, but since then, 6 in a row with nothing. A bunch of shots, none of them going in, kind of like last year with Arizona, actually, now that I think about it. So if you have Jacob Chychrun, you were excited about the deal. Now you're realizing it's not going that great. Kind of miss Chychrun in Arizona at this point. What do you do here? Are we holding on, expecting him to bounce back? He's not on the top power play. You know who is on the top power play lately? It also hasn't been Shabbat. Jake Sanderson has been getting a shot on the top power play. So who knows what's like, they're losing all these games, right? So I wouldn't be surprised to see the Sens shuffle things around again. And I think for next year, it'll be exciting to like go for a Jacob Chychrun and see. But for now, moving forward, I don't know. I just don't know. Especially if you were in a points only league and like these shots weren't even helping you. It's hard to imagine him getting a ton of points if he's not getting like that primo power play time.
it is a bummer that Chychrun isn't getting top power play time, which of course we knew was going to happen when he came to Ottawa, right? And we did talk about the possibility that maybe he does end up stepping onto the top unit because Shabbat isn't somebody who's had a ton of success there. And then, as you already mentioned, sure enough, Jake Sanderson has gone and done that job instead. But back to Chychrun for just another minute. I like that he's at least shooting, even without that really great power play opportunity. And still the Sens have two like decent enough units, right? You've got Giroux basically on his own on the second unit right now because of injuries. But I could see that second unit still potentially seeing 45% of the time share, depending on how the team wants to arrange things. So I wouldn't count Chychrun out of meaningful power play time just yet. And I like that, again, 3 games in a row where Chychrun has put 4 shots on goal. Eventually, as you said, one of them is going to go in, or somebody else is going to come clean up one of those rebounds and pop it into. So I'm glad to see Chychrun still shooting. But yeah, as we said, when he was traded to Ottawa, his value goes down because he's no longer the top power play quarterback, which is where he picked up a bunch of his points in, 2 seasons ago in Arizona, 14 power play points in 56 games, huge pacing. Earlier this season, though, when he was, check that was 3 seasons ago. Last season, he had just the lone power play point in 47 games because Chychrun was more or less booted from the top unit. And this year, by the way, Chychrun's on a 58-point pace without heavily relying on power play production either, pacing for like 13 power play points, which isn't a whole lot anyway. So just because the power play opportunity is gone doesn't mean that Chychrun's fantasy value is. So I'm holding out some hope for him. And meanwhile, yeah, Jake Sanderson taking over the top unit and doing pretty well right off the hop with it. And it's over, or it's happening or begun. I'm not sure what the word is here, but when you see an article on The Athletic from Ian Mendes saying how Jake Sanderson, the title is how Jake Sanderson is becoming Ottawa's number 1 defenseman with help from Daniel Alfredson. And anytime Alfie's name is invoked, like, it's serious. And that like, this is a thing now. And the article goes on to say that, Jake Sanderson has been working on his game. He was able to sit down with Daniel Alfredson, get some tips about how to be the number 1 defenseman, both at 5-on-5 and on the power play. It's just a couple games that we've seen Sanderson in the role so far, but he does have 3 power play points in his last 3, including a pair against Colorado. So I actually added him for my upcoming Cupful playoff matchup. I'm hopeful that he'll provide some good value for me. If not, we've talked about him a bunch on the show this year, right? If not on the top power play, which is where he is right now. So that's promising, but there's still enough offense in Ottawa, and he still has improved basically every game this year. So while the points haven't come regularly for Sanderson all season, I wouldn't be surprised if he just continues this slow build that he's been on through the season.
Yeah, I mean, top power play on Ottawa is pretty sweet, right? You're playing with a lot of really great players. And like, there are a lot of players on Ottawa who are hot right now. Like you look at like Stützle, Brady Tkachuk, those guys are great. You're going to want to be on a power play with those guys. If Sanderson's that guy, then yeah, Andrea was just saying in the chat, do I have to stay up until 3 a.m. to try to snag Sanderson? I think maybe. Like, that's a really good spot for him to be in, no doubt. By the way, one player on Ottawa that we thought would also do well, aside from Chychrun, is Matt Sogard. He got called up, a high pedigree guy, when Topic got injured. And yeah, I think we were saying on the show, like, go get him. Like, the Sens are looking good and he's going to be their volume guy. And this has not gone well. I'm counting now 6 games in a row of letting in 4 or 5 goals. So definitely not the goal. Like, he's hurting you more than he's helping you, even if he has gotten the volume. We did get that right, Brian. We did correctly predict that Sogard would get a lot of games. But yeah, it's not looking good. The Sens have actually just made a change. They sent Kevin Mandolese down to the minors and recalled a guy now named Dylan Ferguson, who is, I guess, going to step in to be the backup. And the way Sogard has been playing, maybe Ferguson gets a game. Maybe we see, who knows? All I know is, like, I'm disappointed in the Sens over. Brian, I wore my Sens hat the last time we did a podcast together. I was really excited about cheering for my old stomping ground team. And now I kind of feel like, all right, back in the drawer, maybe next year.
Yeah, I guess you can be forgiven. It's been a disastrous week for Ottawa and their playoff chances. And Matt Sogard just has not, unfortunately, been up to the task of being the team's next miracle Andrew Hammond type run. He's been extremely consistently bad. 850 save percentage over his last 4 games, all of them losses, made it to a shootout once in several rounds of the shootout too against Toronto, but it hasn't gone well. I don't know, Elon. I can't really read in a whole lot into what this change in minor league goalie, like sending Mandolese. Maybe Mandolese is the better goalie for Belleville, and Dylan Ferguson, or like they want him to play a few more games, so maybe he can get, I don't know, work on something, so he can maybe take the net from Sogard. It's a bad situation for Ottawa. I will say Dylan Ferguson, I'm looking at his numbers, like his pedigree, not great. He's 24 years old. He was drafted in the 7th round back in 2017 by the Dallas Stars. Played a little bit in Toronto's minor league system this year before heading over to the ECHL for a little bit. But since joining the Belleville Senators, and I wonder if he came, I don't know at what point he joined the Belleville Senators, but 6 games and a .935 save percentage. Again, I don't know what any of this really means in terms of who's going to start in net. I have to imagine it's going to be Mads Sogard, but I guess if he needs a break, maybe it's Dylan Ferguson who goes in instead of Mandolese, for whatever that could be worth on a team that is floundering at the worst possible time.
Yeah, I think you might just want to stay away from the Sens net for now. Of course, we could say that, and then next week we'll be talking about how Sogard had 3 great games, and all of a sudden we're like so high on him. So if you already have him, it's almost like you might as well hold him while he's playing. But if let's say on Tuesday or whatever, it's announced that Sogard isn't even getting the game, so Ottawa's not, it's Monday. Ottawa plays Monday, Tuesday. So yeah, so he's going to get one of those games, but they're against Pittsburgh and Boston on the road. So I don't know. Yeah, I'd be pretty nervous for either of those games. Though, speaking of cold goalies, Pittsburgh has one of their own, and that's Tristan Jarry, who, Brian, Jarry sucks now. Like, he's really bad. Like, he's like too scary to start, in my opinion. Like, if you look at his game log recently, he just let in 4 goals against the Rangers before getting pulled. Before that, he did okay. And I guess the previous game against the Rangers, also a loss. He let in 3. Before that, he was pulled versus Montreal, letting in 4 goals on 11 shots. Not good. Okay. Then before that, he had an okay game. I guess he's maybe going back and forth, but yeah, there's a lot of real stinkers here. Like, you look at the game log and you say, yeah, some 4 goals against games. That's not great. But like, a lot of them are because he got pulled. He would have let in like more goals, but like, Jarry's just been like absolutely destroying people in a bad way if you have him. Of course, like, Casey DeSmith is not much better. He has actually had, though, a couple good games. I wouldn't be surprised if maybe DeSmith gets in. Like, DeSmith definitely did not help too much when he came in for that game against the Rangers yesterday. But overall, just like, things are really falling apart over in Pittsburgh, and it starts in net. I don't know, kind of like with Rasmus Dahlin, I almost wonder if Jarry is injured or has something going on, because he seemed really solid for a lot of the year. And then all of a sudden, he like can't stop the puck. He can't finish a game.
Yeah. Well, both of those two things are related, right? And one of the big asks for Pittsburgh Penguins fans at the trade deadline was a goalie, right? They've lost faith in Jarry. They didn't have faith in DeSmith to begin with, and they thought maybe they should shore up their goaltending situation. That's not what they did, and now they're paying the consequences. I mean, you know me, I've always said, like, my take on Jarry hasn't been that he's great, but that he's been good enough. But this year, he has not been good enough. This is Jarry's worst year, going by how he's performing against his expected numbers. This is Jarry's worst season of his career. And Jarry, the last 3 years, has met my take. Like, my take has been built on those, which basically, yeah, he's about average. He's not going to really outperform your average guy. He's not going to badly underperform them either, though. And that's a plus. And at least in the last few years, he's had a reasonable quality start percentage. He's been above 60% in each of them. This year, Tristan Jarry's quality start percentage under 60%, which is like a big difference. It's pretty, like, 60% and above, that's good. 50% and below is bad. In the middle is like, you ideally don't want your starter there. And Tristan Jarry's at 55% this year, which beats Casey DeSmith's 45%. But again, that illustrates the problem that the Penguins find themselves in, is that they have no goalie who is ready to really perform. And by raw numbers, this is also Jarry's worst season of his career. So Elon, I'm not sure what the actionable advice is here. Like, I wonder.
Tristan Jarry.
Yeah, I think maybe that's it, especially if DeSmith starts getting starts. But I would be surprised. Like, the reason that Tristan Jarry keeps starting, even while messing up, is because the Penguins know that like a 60 or 70% Tristan Jarry probably still beats 100% Casey DeSmith. So the Penguins, living with the consequences of decisions they made at the deadline or all season, all off season. Actually, I saw Penguins fans banging the drum saying, we need another goalie. We don't trust these guys. And Tristan Jarry no longer an auto hold. Elon, if you're holding him, you might be snoozing.
Yeah, like depends who's out there. Like Marc-Andre Fleury is starting to steal the net back over in Minnesota.
way to shove the dagger into the hearts of Penguins fans listening.
Sorry, it's not the first time that all of a sudden Marc-Andre Fleury has done really well while the Pittsburgh goalie has not after they let Fleury go. So yeah, like, I don't know. It depends who's out there, but yeah, I would be looking like, especially if you're in like a categories league, it's not just like a volume thing. Like you just need a goalie to actually play well and not like hurt your save percentage. I'd be very nervous to start Jarry at this point. I think it's going to come out at the end of the year that he's injured, to be honest, or like there's something wrong with him. That's my guess.
Like, I guess it's possible. Like, it's not inconceivable though that this is how Tristan Jarry plays. Like I don't need, like, I'm not like, oh, there has to be an explanation here. There's just could be, but yes, it is worse than we would expect from him.
Yeah, definitely.
So we'll find out.
Okay, so I've got some more cold goalies actually for you, Brian. So we'll run through a bunch of those. We went through the cold D. Again, I'm kind of like focusing on the cold to start each of these discussions, just because I feel like here's what I'm thinking. You're in the playoffs. You're listening to this. You probably have some players on your free agent list or waiver wire that you're like kind of excited to add. I did the matchup maximizer yesterday. I talked about how Colorado has an awesome schedule. Arizona has an awesome schedule. You're seeing maybe some guys from those teams in free agency. You're trying to figure out like, who do I drop? And, all season, you've probably held a lot of these high-end guys because like, I'm not going to drop Tristan Jarry. Like I spent a lot of draft capital on him. So yeah, I wanted to start with like cold players and like get that discussion of like, and if, who Brian thinks are potentially droppable. So yeah, I got a bunch of goalies here that are not doing well. I want to go next to Vitek Vanacek, who's in the middle of a game right now for New Jersey, and the Devils are up 3-2 against Tampa. So we'll see how this game finishes off. So far, Vanacek's only stopped 14 of 16, which isn't great, but maybe he'll end up holding on and the Devils will win and they'll be happy with him. But before this game, Vanacek led in 4 in the previous game he played versus Tampa. He did have a shutout in the game before that versus Carolina, but then before that, Vanacek had 3 games in a row, letting in 4 or more goals, like 5 games in a row, letting in 3 or more goals. Like it's been a while aside from that one rogue shutout that Vanacek has had a good game. And again, we'll see how today finishes. In the meantime, Akira Schmid has been getting more starts. Schmid played 2 games in a row before Vanacek played today. Of course, like Saturday and today was like a back-to-back, so you knew that both goalies would play. Schmid had been on a really good run. I will mention that he has led in 3 goals in each of his last 2 games. With that game against Florida on Saturday, where Florida won 4-2, Schmid like had 40 shots again. So it's actually a pretty good save percentage, letting in only 3 goals. So I wonder if we're at a point where the Devils are going to start flipping things around. Obviously, a lot might depend just on this game that's not finished right now, Brian. Maybe I should have pushed this to like at the end of part 2 so we can get more data. Maybe we can do a check-in later on about how Vanacek is doing, but I'd be a little bit nervous as a Vanacek manager. He's been so great all season long, but I do wonder if maybe Schmid, and here's the thing, if you look at the Devils schedule next week, they play Tuesday against Minnesota and then Friday, Saturday. So it's like a back-to-back and then Tuesday. So if like Vanacek doesn't get the Tuesday, let's say they are doing a rotation and let's say Schmid gets that Tuesday start, that means only 1 game out of Vanacek, which like as a corollary means you want Schmid. Like if Schmid is available in free agency and he gets announced for Tuesday, that's 2 starts. But on the other hand, maybe at that point you would potentially be wanting to just drop Vanacek and get another goalie or another skater that's going to actually get in your lineup.
It's a really good point. Like this is another potential snoozer in Vitek Vanacek, and that's crazy to say. And I should point out that even though Vitek Vanacek is playing poorly, he's still won 7 of his last 11 decisions in the last 6 weeks, during which he has had an .884 save percentage and a truly awful Delta Fenwick save percentage, which means he is playing. His expected Fenwick save percentage is .943. He's actually put up a .913 at 5-on-5. That's really bad. That's like, I don't know really how to quantify it other than saying that's really bad. Like that's bottom of the chart bad. That's worst goalie in the league bad. And Vitek Vanacek is losing starts. As a result, we're seeing this pattern of like 2 on, 2 off instead of 1 on, 1 off. And as you mentioned, Elon, Schmid is doing a fantastic job of holding his own, and Vanacek is not finding his game. New Jersey is a cup contender though, right? And you have to think that they see Vitek Vanacek as their best chance to go deep into the playoffs. However, I also don't think they need to be like, so ideally they have him going, right? Ideally they have both goalies going though. And I don't think Vitek Vanacek is like as much a franchise cornerstone, or like he just got there, right? He had a good couple months. Maybe that's discrediting some of the amazing work he had an amazing November, 8-1 record, .930 save percentage. In January, 8-0, 932 save percentage. But the truth is that this season, if you split it into months, Vitek Vanacek has had as many sub 900 months as he has had above 900 months, which means that this is a guy who's inconsistent and maybe ripe for the picking for a starter's job. So we'll see if Schmid can keep taking starts or at least getting in net, which is crazy, right? Like he was not on our radar at all. Akira Schmid this year. We had Mackenzie Blackwood on our radar. Last year, I was talking up Nico Dawes as at this same time of year as someone I liked as the next best guy to try. But Schmid getting in net, holding his own. And you've got to reconsider if you've been leaning on Vanacek this year. And Elon, I think this is also a good moment for me to make the point. I don't know if you remember back. I don't know when it was in the offseason or around draft time, or maybe it was this time last year, where we noticed the trend that goalies fade this time of year. Like if you rely on a goalie to get you all the way up to your fantasy playoffs, what you might want to do is trade that goalie at the deadline. It might feel crazy at the time, but we have seen this pattern now for a couple seasons at least, where goalies who are super strong and are the backbone of your fantasy team and their real life teams go cold and can't keep it up as the games mount and the miles, all that stuff, all the wear and tear of a regular season. I think it's a real thing. So relying on any one goalie is a tough thing to do at any time of year, but it's especially tough now. So there's not much actionable advice now, except to maybe realize from all the names we're bringing up that, hey, this might actually be a real trend that you need to consider and be aware of come the next fantasy season. And for now, just make sure you check your goalies each and every game to make sure you're getting the value that you think you're supposed to be getting from them.
Yeah, goalies are really tough. And maybe Brian is, like maybe you are actually onto something that maybe in general, a lot of these guys slow down, especially the ones that have been like workhorses for a lot of the season. Also on New Jersey, we had a question from Ryan asking about Timo Meier. He said, are you guys planning on talking about Timo Meier at all tomorrow? It's like, bro, you're a patron. If you ask us to talk about someone, we're going to talk about someone. You support the show. Okay. So yeah, we're going to talk about him right now. And so Ryan continued, seems like he's missing that consistency that I loved on San Jose, but that might just be a product of lack of chemistry. However, the third line deployment was a little concerning. Would love to hear what you guys think. I'm stressing because I have him on both of my teams, was planning on keeping him next year. So as far as the deployment goes, like New Jersey's changing those lines all the time. I'm looking at today's lines, and Meier's been playing on a line with Hischier and Jesper Bratt. So in terms of that, like I wouldn't be too worried. He's on the top power play. New Jersey's clearly just trying to find something that works. But I will say that New Jersey is up. Like I said, 3-0, 3-2 is up. 3-2 over Tampa Bay today, and no points for Timo Meier. Once again, he does have a couple shots, but yeah, he was also pointless in the last game versus Florida. He did get a couple goals versus Tampa at the start of the week, but yeah, aside from that, it's been a bit of a cold stretch for Meier. But I will say that a lot of these players who have gone to new teams have like been cold for a little bit and then turned it around. Like Patrick Kane didn't do much in his first few games, and now more recently has been doing a lot better on the Rangers. So I do wonder if it's just a matter of finding that chemistry. But also, I mean, Meier was the top dog over in San Jose, right? Like he was the guy to always get the puck to Meier if you want to score a goal, right? Now, all of a sudden on New Jersey, like they have a lot of guys who could score a lot of goals, namely like Jack Hughes is awesome. Hischier, awesome. Like even the defenseman. Well, I guess San Jose has a pretty good defenseman also, but you know what I'm saying? There's a lot more depth here. So it is interesting. Like maybe Meier won't be the same like fantasy stud that he was over on San Jose. So I think it's a legitimate concern. Curious to get your take, Brian, as I mean, there's nothing you can do. Like obviously you're not dropping Timo Meier. Like he's definitely not at that level, but as far as a keeper for next year, is he even signed? I don't even think he's signed right now, so we don't even know if he'll be on New Jersey. So I guess we'll talk about, I mean, you'll probably want to keep him though, I'd imagine, no matter where he goes.
He's a keeper for me in one league, and he's still a keeper until right now he's a restricted free agent, right? So that makes him most likely to sign with the Devils, but if they can't fit him under the cap, maybe they send his rights elsewhere and get some kind of return for him. But I'd say it's definitely possible. Like Timo Meier sticks in New Jersey, especially if they have some playoff success. What's going on with him in New Jersey? Like you said, Elon, not a whole lot other than I think he's just not the guy anymore. He's seeing a minute less per night at 5-on-5. He's shooting a little less often, both at 5-on-5 and on the power play. He only has one assist in all the games he's played for New Jersey, which is he's up to 8 games with the Devils. So that's another reason why things are going well. Although I can't say his team is like drastically underperforming with him on the ice either. He's just been the one scoring the goals rather than picking up the assists, and the goals have not been enough to make up for the lack of assists either. So I think this is something you already mentioned about a new player coming to a new team, trying to adjust, find his place, especially when Timo Meier was one of two guys on the front side. You've got Karlsson on D, but on the forward side, it's a big change going from a team that is basically tried to run a top 9 when Meier first arrived, and is like now seems to be leaning back towards concentrating offense within that top 6. And I think you just got to be patient. You might be seeing 3 shots a game instead of 4 shots per game with Meier in New Jersey. You might see a 70-point pace instead of a 75 or 80-point pace. And I think that's just going to be part and parcel of Meier having to share a little bit more than he did in San Jose.
Yeah. So sorry, Ryan, I wanted to give you better news, but I think there's something, but I think he'll still be good, right? Just like maybe not as good. Like Brian's saying, yes, for Bratt was cold. I was going to bring him up, but hey, he's already scored a couple goals today. So we could cross that off the list. I'm sure Brian was just going to say he's fine anyways. I'll mention David Severson is actually on a nice little run. We all remember last year when Severson was getting top power play, even after Dougie Hamilton came back, and was like, what is going on here? And probably was just Hamilton wasn't fully recovered from that injury. So that hasn't happened, of course, this year, but that hasn't stopped Severson. For now, he has an assist today that brings him up to 4 points in his last 4 games, a nice little 4-game point streak. And actually before that, he had a 2-game point streak. Like, you know what? Let's go back to the last 9 games. And I'm counting 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 points. So Damon Severson, look at that. I guess when you're on a team like the Devils that scores a lot of goals, you're going to get in on them. And also he's taking some shots.
Except for Timo Meier, right? Like,
well,
that's the funny part here is Damon Severson is getting all these points by being in on him. But yeah, eight points in his last 11 games. He's pointed in 8 of his last 11. So Severson's on a great run. Elon, would you prefer him to Charlie McAvoy?
No, I don't think so.
Noah Dobson?
I take Dobson over Severson. Yeah.
Okay, and you took Sandin over Dobson. How about Seth Jones versus Severson?
Ooh, yeah, maybe Severson, actually. I just feel like
me too. Yeah. Like, I'd be looking to replace Seth Jones, and Severson's hot. He's got 4 shots already tonight, and he's only played 13 minutes. That's uncharacteristic, though. I wouldn't get used to that, but it's nice to see him involved. He had another hot run earlier in the season where he was super valuable. It happens. Oh, we have Andrea in the chat is asking Severson or Sanderson. I would take Sanderson.
Sanderson, yeah. While he's on the top power play. Yeah. I mean, that could change in Ottawa, right? So like you have to watch GameDayTweets.com and make sure that that's still a thing. But okay, Brian, we still have a lot to get to here, but I think we're good to take a little break. I got some more cold goalies I want to throw at you. I'll even tell you who they are. We're going to talk about Gustafsson, who maybe is losing the net to Fleury. Binnington, just the whole mess with him. Jonathan Quick. Not surprising, but yeah, what's going on in Arizona. So we'll get to that. Then I still have like a bunch of hot streaks and cold streaks of injuries and outjuries. We'll see how we fit it all in on the next hour, but it's going to be fun. Hope you join us for the ride. So if you've been listening to part 1, please don't hesitate to now go download part 2. Hopefully, actually, it's already downloaded for you. Otherwise, you're not doing it right? Like you need to subscribe to the podcast so you get everything coming automatically. So what if you're driving in a tunnel and you're just planning, I'll just download part 2 when I'm done, then all of a sudden you're in this tunnel and there's a lot of traffic. Next thing you know, you can't even get it. So yeah, just subscribe to Keeping Karlsson. You'll get also the matchup maximizers. You'll get the short shifts episodes. We got a lot coming into the feed. We're not stopping till the end of the season, and even after that. Okay, so iTunes, wherever, Spotify, wherever you get your podcast. I use Pocket Casts for what it's worth. Subscribe, and part 2 should already be there. And I hope you like it. I hope it'll be fun. I can't tell you if it's good yet because we haven't recorded it yet, but I hope it's good. Bye. All right. What was
done by 10? Think we can do it?
I don't know. I'll go quick on my end. So we'll see.
Right. I'll try.
All right.
Quick too. What were you going to say?
So Andy said that when I said like that if a patron asks a question, I'll answer it. And he said Elon continues to write promises his attention spans can't catch. I'm still not following. What does that have to do with my attention span? Is it like that?
Did you not follow through? We did talk about Meier.
Yeah. Andy, elaborate, please. I'm just curious to know, have I been like, what's even a word for like someone with a low attention span? Have I been like distracted? I wonder. I don't know. Probably. I mean, who isn't nowadays? All the apps out there, instant gratification. This is okay. the commercialization of people's attention. All right, Brian wants to be done by 10. Let's do this. Okay. Yes, welcome back, everybody, to part 2 of episode 479 of the Keeping Karlsson Fantasy Hockey Podcast. I'm your host here, Elon Dubrovsky. I've been chatting with Brian Com about players that are hot, cold, mainly cold. We're going to get more into hot this time as people are getting into their fantasy playoff, semi, and quarter, and even finals. What an exciting time, Brian. And we've got a ton to get to. So I, of course, will start by saying, hello, how are you? And I'm going to hope that you're going to give me a very short answer because we got a lot to get to.
I am good.
Okay, so Brian, we were talking about some goalies on cold streaks. So yeah, all of a sudden, Philip Gustafsson, who I feel like just a couple shows ago, and this is the thing with goalies, right? Why do we even talk about them? Why do we spend so much time on them? But yeah, at one point we were talking about how it looks like he's stealing the net from Marc-Andre Fleury. He's doing so well. Well, he was doing like amazing. And like, if this was again looking long term, I'd be like, I'm not going to give up on him because he was coming off like 2 straight shutouts against Calgary. The last time I think we talked about him. Since then, he's led in 5 goals against Arizona and then 4 goals against Boston. Meanwhile, all of a sudden, Marc-Andre Fleury seems to be turning things around. He was in net today for the 5-3 win over Washington. So now looking to next week, Minnesota plays Tuesday, Thursday, Saturday. I wouldn't be surprised if Fleury gets the start on Tuesday against New Jersey. Probably means he gets 2 starts next week, which probably means there's not much reason to hold Philip Gustafsson. So yeah, I think we might be a snoozer. And obviously this all depends on like who gets the Tuesday start, but just based on what's happened recently and Minnesota still wants to win games here, I don't see why they wouldn't go back to Fleury.
I agree. I see Fleury. I agree. You had Gustafsson with 2 consecutive shutouts. One of those was a loss because of a shootout loss in Calgary. And then Fleury took the net and gave up 2 goals against 2 consecutive nights where he faced 48 and 37 shots. Then it went back to Gustafsson, laid an egg against Arizona. Fleury kind of laid an egg, like he won, but he gave up 5 goals to St. Louis, then back to Gustafsson. I'm trying to find a pattern here, Elon. I'm not quite seeing one, but I don't see any reason to think. Well, the pattern I see is that if a goalie plays really well, they might get that second start in a row. And Gustafsson did not play really well against Boston on Saturday. And that means that Fleury could have at least the first start, possibly the second start, or he could get the first start, blow it, and then Gustafsson gets the next one, plays well, and then gets the next. There's a lot of ways this could shake out, but I think I guess the takeaway here is that don't give up on Marc-Andre Fleury, who had been serving backup duties for a long, long time. But yeah, he has been on fire. He's had, well, up until this game against St. Louis, he had 5 really, really, really strong starts. And it looks like he's put himself back into the conversation as being the straight up starter, or at least the 1A.
Yeah, and sticking with the Wild, Brian, we've got to talk about the guy who's really stepped up in Kirill Kaprizov's absence. I swear I said on a podcast, or maybe it was just in my head, I feel like I said that with Kaprizov injured, I could see someone like a Matt Boldy, like really stepping up and taking over that role as being like the go-to guy. And like, whether I said it or not, it's definitely what's happened. He's been like insane since Kaprizov got injured. I think probably we were saying, oh, this probably isn't the kind of thing that's good for anybody. False. This has been very good for Boldy to really establish himself as a potential superstar in the league when he is their team's best player. He just had a hat trick today against Washington, which brings his streak to now 9 points in his last 5 games. Boldy is a very, very good player. He's like, last year when he was breaking out, a lot of people were thinking, myself included, like, I wonder how much of this has to do with him playing with Kevin Fiala, who always goes blazing hot in the second half. But now we're seeing with this run, like, this is really convincing me that like Boldy is going to be a really high end player in this league. Only 21 years old, taking the team on his back, also taking Marcus Johansson on his back, because Marcus Johansson is someone who you can never really rely on. He's playing on this Boldy line, and all of a sudden he's got 5 points in his last 3 games. So you probably can't get Boldy because he's rostered in like all leagues that are serious. But if you want to get a piece, I guess you can go with Marcus Johansson, who, yeah, is riding. I shouldn't be too mean. He's not riding coattails, but you know what I mean? Like, he's definitely getting in on this amazing hot streak by Matt Boldy.
One thing that's been impressive about the Wild here, like you said, we were wondering like who would step up, and basically everyone has still been producing really well without Kaprizov. I know Kaprizov has gone missing at just an awful time for his fantasy managers, right? Like, this is, I mentioned Brandon at the start of the show having, like, he's about to lose a second consecutive week to the same, to Harrison, who kept him in this match, who forced him into this matchup in the first place. And Brandon lost Kaprizov not long ago. And I think that has to, to Brandon's credit, that has something to do with his trouble so far. But Minnesota not faltering so terribly. Since Kaprizov has been out, the goals have continued coming. Partially in thanks to Matt Boldy and his heroics, but overall, the Wild have scored now. How many did they get today?
5. Oh, it's at a point. Okay.
Oh, sorry. 14, 22, 24. 24 goals in their last 5 games without Kaprizov. And you look at Matt Boldy, crushing it. You already mentioned Marcus Johansson doing great. Ryan Hartman still doing well, even though, remember, he couldn't even be a top line center with Kaprizov. He's got 6 points in 5 games without Kaprizov. Matt Zuccarello is slowed down a little. He's still taking shots. Joel Eriksson Ek, he took consecutive 6-shot games and has 5 points in his last 3. You mentioned Marcus. Like, there's a lot going on here in Minnesota, and that's not what we expected to see with Kaprizov leaving the lineup. But that's great news for anybody who is still rostering Wild. And if Marcus Johansson is still out there for you, like Elon, I grabbed him a couple weeks ago. It was going to be like a very short-term stream, and he wasn't doing anything. But then I had a bye week. I'm like, okay, well, I don't need to send him out of my lineup now. I don't see anybody that I need to add right this second. And then I went on vacation and I didn't look at my roster for a few days, and I was ready to drop him today. But I went and saw what he did for me, and I was very pleased. He's gonna stay on my roster for a little while yet, especially playing with Matt Boldy. One more name I'll throw out there, Elon, just to touch base on, is John Klingberg in Minnesota. He has not pointed in the last couple of games, but he is shooting more than he was in Anaheim. He is seeing more power. Like, he is quarterbacking top power play. He has 9 shots in his last 3 games, total of 4 points in 8 games since joining the Wild, which isn't great, but I still think there is some promise. Like, if he was out there, I would drop Seth Jones to add John Klingberg.
I will even go a step further. I think I would take Klingberg over Charlie McAvoy for next week.
Wow.
Well, Boston plays 4 times and Minnesota plays 3 times, but all else equal, I would consider Klingberg on the top power play over McAvoy on the second power play.
What about Dahlin?
I would take Dahlin. I'll take the top power play, though I am nervous about this injury. I think there's something wrong with Dahlin, but again, that's just me. Just like, what do I know, right? Also, I got another like sort of like, this guy doesn't know what he's talking about, but I could just be a blowhard. Don't you think it might be like good for Minnesota? Almost like, how much confidence does it give a team if like their superstar goes down and then they're still like able to be so successful? And now they're going to go into the playoffs and Kaprizov will be back. And I wonder if like, this has like been a good thing for them almost to show that like, oh yeah, we can even score goals without this guy. Now he's back. We could do this, guys.
And they were struggling to score goals on a regular basis. Like, going back to February, the Wild had so many nights where they only scored 1 or 2 goals, and coach was just like, I don't know what to tell you. And the GM, Bill Guerin, was like, I don't know what to tell you. Like, they know what they're supposed to do. They need to go out there. I remember I saw a picture, I think it was the Wild, where they left the scoreboard showing the score from the night prior as like motivation to the team. Like, they were so down on them, and now they're ripping without Kaprizov. So yeah, it's got to be. And then when you get Kaprizov back, it's like, okay, well, we were this good without him. Here we go now.
Yeah, no, I think Minnesota could be an interesting team in the playoffs this year. Like, the West, as been discussed, like isn't super deep. So I don't see why they can't potentially go on a run. And like, as long as they could avoid Colorado, which actually right now, if the playoffs were to start today, Minnesota would play Colorado in the first round, which would not be the best get. But assuming Colorado goes and leapfrogs Minnesota and Dallas and gets to the top of the division, which I think they will, then yeah, I think Minnesota could potentially go on a nice little run there. They'll be fun to watch. We're still talking about struggling goalies. Let's talk about Jordan Binnington. Okay, what to do with this guy? Like, Yahoo also did a frustrating thing, not to me, like didn't hurt me or anything, but I noticed that Yahoo gave Binnington an O, so you were able to put him. I don't know if that's still the same, but someone on our Discord was mentioning that like generally on Yahoo, when a player is suspended, you can't even put him in IR, so you're just like stuck with a lost spot. So whoever was able to stash Binnington and open up that spot got a real advantage, because I was considering, like, I would have said, like, before the suspension of 2 games, just drop him. Like, you're not gonna have an open spot just for Jordan Binnington, who hasn't even been good. And in Binnington's last few games, very bad, right? He let in 5 goals in that game where he went off the handle against Minnesota and then didn't fight Fleury. I guess it was more the refs that decided they wouldn't fight. But anyway, like he let in 4 goals the game before that versus Vegas. Like Binnington's been bad. He has an 892 save percentage on the season. So now he'll come back from his suspension. I assume he'll get a game, though it's worth mentioning that Joel Hofer was called up from the minors, who's been having a really great season, and he's having a really good game today. He's currently, I don't want to jinx anything, but he's currently stopped all 28 shots he's faced against the Winnipeg Jets with about 7 minutes to go. So if I'm the Blues and I'm trying to win, why am I going back to Binnington? So I think that maybe you drop Binnington. If he doesn't get that next, I guess it'll be interesting to see, who gets that next game. The St. Louis plays next against Detroit on Tuesday. If Binnington's not playing that game, I don't know if I'd be holding him, especially if you could get Hofer, who's probably good. If Binnington's not playing, it's going to be Hofer playing, and I'd rather just get him in the short term.
I feel like if Hofer, if he's doing well, then why not just keep putting him in the net? He is a 920 in the AHL this year and 40 appearances with the Springfield Thunderbirds. And this is not his first good season in Springfield. So I wonder if this is an opportunity for Hofer to finally show that, hey, I can play at the NHL level and maybe honestly, I think St. Louis would be very happy to have someone to push Binnington. He's been brutal, but also to be fair, and this is also a red flag for Joel Hofer himself, is you gotta look out if you're playing behind the Blues these days. They look like they've completely thrown in the towel. Over the last month, they are giving their goalie less protection than Chicago and Columbus are giving their goalies. Only Anaheim, Buffalo, and Montreal are giving up higher quality chances against than St. Louis over the last month. So that's a reason to want to steer clear of either St. Louis goalie, regardless of who's playing. But Binnington has been inconsistent. I was listening to Short Shifts with Shamans and Lewis, who were talking about just how unreliable Binnington's been for a long time. He's been on my cupful roster all season. And every time I start to think about dropping him, he sort of has one big spike. And sometimes he keeps it up for a couple games. Sometimes he goes quiet again immediately. It's just been enough to stay on my roster. But yeah, if he is roster eligible again, he is currently O on Yahoo, or last time I checked my roster, he was. If I have to make a choice about dropping him rather than activating him, it's consideration I will certainly give based on how rarely he's given me a really rewarding start this year.
Yeah, this out thing really enrages me, Brian. Yahoo, get it together. Okay. If you're going to make a change, do it in the off season. There's been people who have held suspended players or dropped them. Yeah. Now you change the rules. So there's probably people who dropped Binnington because they assumed since he was getting suspended, he wasn't going to be eligible. And now they're probably oh, well, I'm a dumb. And we're saying here that maybe you drop him anyways, but it's so stupid.
Well, it happened with the Letang and Skinner, right? Someone else Letang wasn't NA eligible or IR plus eligible, and Skinner was, even though they're both designated non-roster for similar statuses. And then there was somebody else who was designated non-roster, and he got a brand new status. I can't remember who it was off the top, but it was IR-NR for non-roster, and he could go IR plus. So yeah, I'm happy to see mistakes being fixed, but it is doesn't feel totally fair, right? If some folks had to suffer before the fix was made.
Yeah, no, it's stupid. But what are you going to do? By the way, Brian, I did check because I said Hofer. I felt good about it. You started saying Hofer. Then for some reason, you just switched. I don't know. I thought we were in agreement here. I just looked it up. It is Hofer. If you're German, it's Hofer, something like that. Anyway, this is German. So it's Hofer. So FYI. Anyway, since we're on St. Louis, how about Jakub Vrana? By the way, and that's another pronunciation. Apparently he had an interview and he was like, I like when they call me Jakub, because that's the actual way to pronounce it. So Jakub Vrana, another goal today. He's red hot. Get him. If you could still get Jakub Vrana, you want him. He's the Vrana that we used to really like a couple seasons ago. He's back and he's good on St. Louis. He's getting good deployment. He's on top power play, getting good. He's getting it all. He's scoring goals. So yeah, I don't think there's much to say about him. Also, you know who's good? And I brought him up before. I'm just going to say it again. Sammy Blais keeps getting points, keeps throwing a lot of hits. If you're in a Bankers League and you don't have Sammy Blais, a categories league where hits is a category, how could you not want this guy who's giving you reliable hits every game? Today, Sammy Blais has 1:55 of power play time. That looks like he's right. Looks like St. Louis is splitting power plays and he's on one of them. great. So that, those are some
Okay.
obvious hits there. Obviously, Kairu, Shen, like a lot of people are hot. Buchnevich, by the way, red hot on St. Louis. He's probably the one. He's just like boring to talk about because everyone has already rostered him. But Buchnevich at this point is on a point streak of what is it now? Like 12 games, 13 games. Like, what's the latest? 19 points in his last 12 games. So yeah, 12-game point streak. Oh, he doesn't have a point today though against Winnipeg. 3 goals. We'll see if he loses that streak. But yeah, a lot of hot players. But the ones that might be available to you are like Verona and Blay.
Yeah, and the last time you mentioned Verana and Blay, I also threw in Kasperi Kapanen, who went quiet for a few games, but now has goals in consecutive nights with a goal tonight against Winnipeg as well, and 6 shots in one and part of a second game. So that's pretty good. So there's another guy in the top 9 who's also seeing some new life in St. Louis and on one of those sort of evenly split power play units too.
All right, so Brian, I still have some more cold goalies I wanted to get to and a lot more. We'll see how this goes, but we're going to take a quick break. We're listening to Keeping Karlsson. All right, we are back. I'm pretty sure I ended that by saying we're listening to Keeping Karlsson. I'm listening to half of Keeping Karlsson, but you listening to the full thing, both tracks. Brian, let's go now to Vegas. Jonathan Quick was like looking like maybe he was reinvented in Vegas, but obviously that wasn't going to be the case. And yeah, he's had a couple bad games. And now today, the Golden Knights decided after Quick had a rough previous game, they decided to give Yuri Patera another game. And Patera, who was like a nobody, he's like this guy that Ottawa called up Ferguson. It's like goalies I didn't expect to like ever be in the NHL. And Patera just put up a real gem today against the Blue Jackets, stopping 35 of 37. So that's interesting. And if it was just going to be Patera and Quick for the rest of the season, then to be honest, I might be like saying, maybe you should pick up this Patera guy because I have more confidence in him. But there's been a lot of news lately about how Logan Thompson and Laurent Brossoit are both traveling with the team on the upcoming road trip. And like there's a quote from Bruce Cassidy I'm seeing here on GameDayTweets.com. I just searched filtered by Logan Thompson to get the latest tweets about him. And it looks like Bruce Cassidy said, it looks like we're turning the corner in that area of goalie health. So probably we're just in a situation where no reason to keep Quick, no reason to jump on Patera. If you have like Thompson available, grab him. Like, I don't know what's going to happen, but it doesn't seem like there's any like one goalie to hold now in Vegas, aside from maybe Thompson. If he was fully healthy, I'd imagine he'd take over as the starter again.
I'd imagine. Yeah. But of course, so much can happen with the goalie coming back from injury. And also the Golden Knights now have 4 injured goalies, right? You've got Thompson, Brossoit, Aiden Hill, and of course Robin Lehner is still up there. I don't think he really counts. If he were healthy, I wonder, or if and when he's healthy, I wonder where he'll slot in to this very busy picture. But Patera's had if anyone doesn't know, Yuri Patera, 24 years old, out of Prague. Has had a really successful season in the AHL, a .916 save percentage in 27 games with the Henderson Silver Knights. And that's coming out of a season where he played some time in the ECHL, which meant his career was just about over. But the 6th round pick of the Golden Knights back in 2017 has found his way into the NHL and put up a great start tonight. But I'm with you, Elon. There's not a whole lot of reason to get too deep into this with so many moving parts in the Vegas goaltending situation. I guess I will say for anybody who was like Jonathan Quick is back, he's not. And that's not me rubbing it in anyone's face. It's too bad, but we basically saw the limits of what we could expect from Jonathan Quick, which is maybe he can find some magic for 1, 2, 3 games at a time, which is more than he did in LA all year. But now I think with that bubble burst, there's not a whole lot of hope that on any given night he's going to have a good one.
Yeah, and then also on Vegas for the offense, like again, a 7-2 win today. Jack Eichel with a hat trick. So anyone who's had him and maybe had some struggles with him, for a while, like happy to finally get something out of him. A really huge game here today on a Sunday. Hopefully, it would be very exciting if like Eichel ended up winning you your week to get you to the next round. Also, I'll bring up a guy in a hot streak that's potentially available in your league, but maybe not anymore. Riley Smith has really been turning it on lately. He had an assist today, bringing him to 10 points in his last 8 games. Like the lines have been like Smith back with Karlsson, and with a guy named Pavel Dorofeyev. That was the line today. And then Eichel, by the way, was playing with Barbashev and Marchessault. So I guess, Smith is like not the top line. And he's also not even on the top power play. It looks like it was Eichel, Barbashev, Stevenson, Marchessault, Shea Theodore. So like on paper, you'd think Barbashev is in a better spot. But I think Riley Smith is clearly the Blue Jacket, the Golden Knight you want of at least those two. So yeah, Riley Smith, good for him. He does this a lot, right? I feel like every season there's a stretch where Riley Smith goes super hot.
Yeah, there've been a few of them this year, and a lot of them have happened in weeks where I'm playing the guy who, the manager who has Riley Smith. So that's been a bummer, but it's nice to see him go off again. Ivan Barbashev, by the way, has really cooled down since his initial arrival in Vegas. His ice time has like stayed reasonably decent, but isn't great. Chandler Stevenson showing some signs of life too. He's got 3 assists, including one against Columbus today in his last 5 games, and go back another game. He's got a goal too, but he's still barely shooting the puck, like 0 or 1 shots per game, which isn't abnormal. But when you're not locked in on the top line or even necessarily top power play, where like he spent some time off that unit over the last season, then not necessarily worth having. But if I had to pick between Barbashev and Stevenson, I'm getting to the point where I'd probably still go Barbashev because he shoots, he hits, and he's still for sure on the top unit.
Yeah, but maybe you look elsewhere. But no, I
Neither
think
is awesome.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I mean, it's hard to not want like a top line, top power play guy for sure, even if he's a little bit cold. All right, one more goal. Okay, this is not a cold streak for a goalie, but it is like you probably drop these people. Like Karel Vejmelka had already been in this split with Connor Ingram, which was already disappointing because it was already originally at the start of the year, like Vejmelka was the volume guy, and then they were like 50-50. But then, you came to grips with that. I'm like, fine, so I'll get every second game from Vejmelka. It's still something. Now, I don't know. I think Vejmelka might not play much for the rest of the year because this guy Ivan Prosvetov, has been called up from the minors for the Coyotes, very much like Joel Hofer. But this isn't a situation where Hofer might get sent back down. I don't know what's going to happen there in St. Louis, right? Once Binnington comes back. But Prosvetov has been announced that he's going to stay with the team. He got 2 games in a row this past week against Vancouver and Chicago, both wins. It's now 3 games and 3 wins for Prosvetov this season. He's got a .952 save percentage. He's been really very good. So I don't know. The Coyotes have 3 goalies. It's hard to recommend jumping on Prosvetov, but because I just don't know how they're going to split the games. But it seems like there's a chance that just this is the guy that's going to get the volume. So of all the Coyotes goalies right now, anyways, Prosvetov is the one I would want, or maybe just the answer is to have no one. But we can't ignore the great run that Prosvetov is on since being called up.
Agreed. I would go Prosvetov until fail. Is my current Arizona goalie strategy. I think I don't see why they wouldn't keep throwing him in while he's putting up good numbers.
Yeah, and the Coyotes, by the way, those 3 wins from Prosvetov, are part of a 6-game win streak. The Coyotes are good now. They had a stretch last year. Remember when they were really scary and good, and then they kind of disappeared again? I don't know if that's gonna happen again this year. But yeah, 6 wins in a row. Plus, like I mentioned, a matchup maximizer yesterday. Arizona has one of the best schedules next week. They go Tuesday and then Wednesday, Friday, Sunday. So a lot of off-day games. Those Friday, Sunday are both against Colorado, which may be tough. But you know what? You may want to say that it's tough to have a Colorado goalie against Arizona because Clayton Keller broke 70 points now. He's chasing Coyotes scoring records. He's having an amazing season. Nick Schmaltz was injured, but he's already back. He continues being great. Barrett Hayton continues to be amazing. People have been even asking about a guy named Jack McBain, who is not someone that I had really heard of going into the season, but all of a sudden he's on a bit of a little run here, and he's really great in your bangers leagues. He had 7 hits in that game yesterday against Chicago and also put up an assist. So I'm counting now 5 points in his last 6 games and just a whole whack of hits. So we had a question actually on our Discord of Hayton versus McBain in a multi-cat league from Brad. And it's I liked, the thinking where Brad was saying maybe I'm giving up a few points, but I'm getting a lot of hits by taking McBain. Obviously it depends what you need, but pretty hard to ignore Barrett Hayton at this point, just getting points every game, scoring goals, on the top line, top power plays. I was basic and just said to go with Hayton, but yeah, definitely you don't ignore either, especially with the good schedule this coming week. So one more, who I talked about with Steve last week. He's the one who I didn't mention this guy. And he was don't forget this guy, Juuso Välimäki, really doing well. When all the defensemen got traded, and then we were saying on the podcast that Välimäki is going to take over as the top power play defenseman and you should grab him. He went cold shortly after that. And in one of the leagues where I added him, I just dropped him and I regret it because now all of a sudden Välimäki has 7 points in his last 4 games. He's riding along with this great win streak. So yeah, a lot of exciting options here on Arizona going into a week with a good schedule and a rare good schedule. This isn't they have 3 off day games, but so do 5 other teams. It's literally Colorado and Arizona are the only teams that have 3 or more off day games. So yeah, lots to chew on here in Arizona. A lot of meat on the bone. I don't know. I don't eat meat, but that's what you say, right?
I'm going to even add a couple more names to the mix there, Elon. First
Let's
off,
do it.
Jack McBain. Yeah, thanks for mentioning him. Great peripherals, takes faceoffs too, if that helps you too. Not a lot of shots, but I'm going to shout out his whole line, including Matthias Michelli, who we've been mentioning on and off through the years. Somebody who's been in the rookie scoring race all through the season, currently sits third with 39 points, 2 behind Mason McTavish and 10 behind the leader, and probably like the Calder favorite and what's been a really boring Calder season, Matty Beniers. Like, remember, Pyotr Kochikov was considered, like, we're like, oh, could he still win the Calder even if he's like sent to the minors halfway through the season? And of course, he's, no,
he's lost it.
Is probably the answer. So Matthias Michelli, who doesn't do a whole lot other than put up assists, although he does have an uncharacteristic 2 goals in his last 3 games. That's come on 4 shots. But I wouldn't necessarily expect that to come. But one knock on him, every time I look at Michelli as an ad in the cupful, I'm like, yeah, maybe he'll get me an assist. But in the cupful, that's still not even that worthwhile if you have no shots or peripherals to go with it. But he's been doing it so consistently now for a month now. Michelli has pointed in all but 5 games in the last month. That's a great little run he's on. It was like 17 games. So if you're looking for points, especially in a points only setup, Matthias Michelli is interesting. And that whole line with McBain, Michelli in the third piece is Lawson Krause also hitting the score sheet too. His shots have really dried up. His hits are still there in large part, but also worth considering in a peripherals league. So yeah, suddenly lots of value to be found in the desert.
Yeah, definitely. Andy's saying if only they could be a real NHL team and not a money laundering scheme, then they could maybe be good in a few years. So we'll see if one day they get good management and actually hold it. Because yeah, they've got a ton of great prospects, right? Like this Arizona team in theory could be good sometime soon. And they have picks, like so many picks already for next draft. All right, Brian, I got some injuries and outjuries for you. Okay, so let's run through these. On Colorado, obviously they already covered on short shifts that Arturi Lehkonen is hurt. Real bummer because Colorado has that amazing schedule next week, the only team with 4 off-day games. And I'm sure there were people that like traded for Lehkonen, did whatever they could to get him just for this week. And now he's out. So that sucks. Hopefully he'll be back for the Avalanche for the playoffs or soon into the playoffs. In the meantime, in the last game, back to Rodriguez on the top line with McKinnon and Rantanen. So that makes Rodriguez very interesting. And then on the top power play, Rodriguez hasn't been there. It's been McKinnon, Rantanen, Nichushkin, Makar, and JT Compher. So let's say you have both Rodriguez and Compher out there in free agency. You want to get in on those 4 off-day games. Who are you going with? Top line or are you going top power play?
I mean, I feel like we've had this discussion earlier in the year, and the answer was either or, because top line in Colorado can be like a top power play. You've got Evan Rodriguez playing with McKinnon and Rantanen at 5-on-5 and playing with them more often than JT Compher does, because you're at 5-on-5 more often than you're on the power play. But of course, on the power play, you have an extra skater. This is all my way of saying, Elon, that I think it washes out. But if you made me choose, I guess I'll go Compher.
I think I'll go Rodriguez, but yeah, I don't think we need to debate it.
Yeah.
Over on Nashville, Roman Josi is hurt. This stinks, Brian. I'm going into the finals in my dynasty league, and Yosi's like one of my main guys. You know what? I actually just bit the bullet and added Matthias Ekholm out of free agency, who, like is obviously looking really good on Edmonton so far, but he carries that big cap hit for, 3 more years. And I don't know like how he's going to age. He's already in his 30s, but I feel like I'm going for it in the playoffs, me and Maddie. And with Josi hurt, we need to do something. And so we'll see how this goes. It might be a short-term thing. Like the latest on Roman Josi is that he's day-to-day with an upper body injury. The Preds are apparently waiting on more results on him. And John Hines said that they're not sure if it's his head, neck, or shoulder as of yet. Like, I don't like that. I don't like that they don't even know. Like, it might be all 3. Like, I don't know. Like, the whole thing scares me. So I guess the bottom line here is that if Tyson Barrie is out there in your league, all of a sudden Tyson Barrie goes back to being a top power play defenseman. It's not the same as being the top power play on Edmonton, but it's not nothing. So, and Barrie might be out there. He's like on a cold streak, only 1 point in his last 7 games. So I think going into next week, I would definitely take a look at free agency and see if you can jump on Tyson Barrie with Josi out.
For as long as Yosi's out, right? And you mentioned we don't really know the full prognosis, and it could be day to day. So just keep an eye on things. But yes, Elon, I will agree with Roman Josi out. I would be very interested in Tyson Barrie, even on a Preds power play that like revolves around Roman Josi, right? Like the other guys on the top unit, it's not quite as bad as the Chicago one, but you've got Matt Duchene. I I don't know. Are you looking at this one too? Can I challenge you to name the other three?
I know them, but first of all, but anyways, let's also like don't even say it as if like Matt Duchene is like the one good one. Like Duchene also is
fair.
on the poop list. It's pointless in his last 6 games. He's, if anything, the real name on that top power play that you want exposure to is probably Tommy Novak, who is red hot, 7 points in his last 6. So you will say at least Barry gets to play with Novak, and then maybe like Barry and Novak together can help Duchene get a point one day.
Yeah, that would be great for anybody waiting on Matt Duchene to get a point. Luke Evangelista is the other guy. He's the least interesting. So you've got Duchene, Barry for now, Tommy Novak, Cody Glass, who hasn't necessarily been pointing, but has 13 shots over his last 3 games. And for a forward, his blocks numbers are decent, 1 or 2 a night, hits as well. So those are some nice little peripherals to help you out, and top power play opportunity. So yeah, it's an interesting top unit in Nashville at the moment, to say the least. But still, I would still like Tyson Barrie if he's available. Yeah, I'm interested.
Hey, isn't Philip Forsberg like returning imminently? Isn't that what we've been told?
That was like, that's a joke, right?
Yeah.
Like, I've been waiting. You know, there was an update. I found it like a week after that quote, but I had to go digging for it. And I still don't, I should have told you so you could have retweeted it. But like, coach did give an update saying, well, you know, we thought it was going to be imminent, but then there's some other stuff that's concerning. Whatever. It's not imminent anymore. I'm not expecting him back.
Bummer. Okay. By the way, I said I'd give an update on Vanacek. He held on. Vanacek. He held on. Yeah, only letting those 2 goals against Tampa. And New Jersey's going to win 5-2 here. So maybe Vanacek gets the next game, and who knows what's going on. So maybe it's going to be 50-50 for the next little while. So it makes it hard to know which New Jersey goal you want, if either. Anyway, next up, I was going to go to Edmonton, actually. So I was going to bring up, actually, Matthias Ekholm. So Zach Hyman was hurt. Now he's back. So I guess nothing really to dig into there. Evander Kane just had a hat trick. Good for him. But yeah, Matthias Ekholm looking really good on his new team. Like, this is another guy who maybe like took a couple games to get going. Like, he got to Edmonton, and then it was looking like, maybe he's going to be more of like a good defensive, player for them, but don't expect much offense. He only had 1 assist in his first 3 games on the Oilers. But since then, well, specifically this last game against Seattle, 3 points, all assists. He also had a couple points in the previous couple games before the one versus Dallas. So we're looking at like 5 points in his last 4 games now for Matthias Ekholm. He's like decent for peripherals. He's had 2 blocks in each of the last 3 games. He had 3 hits in 2 of the last 3 games. Each, I should say. Also, for a while, Ekholm was getting like 0 power play time at all, but all of a sudden, the last couple of games, that's jumped up, and he's been on, I guess, the second power play with around 35% of the time. And he actually did pick up a power play assist on McDavid's goal yesterday. And for what it's worth, I went on Twitter, and Brad, I don't know if you know this, but Oilers fans are very passionate, and they're not shy to say which players.
I've noticed.
So a lot of tweets about how Bouchard sucks, which I don't necessarily think is true, and then a lot of tweets saying that Ekholm should take over. So I'm not going to read into it. It wasn't like any like beat writers that we trust or like, insiders that we trust to saying that kind of thing. But I do wonder if maybe Ekholm does continue to get an even bigger role on the team, and maybe even a bit of a power play role. If not bumping Bouchard, then at least, getting some time with the big names on the power play. So I'm into him. I just added him. I'm stuck with him for 4 years now. Well, 3 years after this one. So I really hope, like, I'm not even asking for much, right? If he could be a 50-point defenseman for me with like solid periffs, that's great. Like, I'm not asking for 60 or 70, nothing crazy, right, Brian? So tell me, please, that it was a good decision and he's not going to let me down and go back to being like a 30-point guy.
I mean, it's a hefty salary, but I think what I like about Ekholm in Edmonton, it's basically like a Darnell Nurse situation, right? Where you've got a guy who is pretty solid and steady, gets a lot of ice time with the best player in the world, and what's now a fairly decent top 6 in Edmonton. You have Hyman and Kane, and of course Leon Draisaitl as well. Nugent Hopkins, like, it's a top 6 there now, which is a lovely thing, and that's a great group to get a lot of time to be on the ice with. And that's one reason why, I am higher on Ekholm as an Oiler than I was on Ekholm as a Predator. And Darnell Nurse's best season as an Oiler came as a 50-point season because he shot 10%. And since then, as expected, he's gone back to his 4% shooting, but a 40-point player. We've already talked about how his hits and shot rates have dropped, blocks, like his peripherals have struggled a bit while in Edmonton, which is a bit of a bummer. For Ekholm's part, though, the reason I made the Darnell Nurse comparison is because he's going to be playing the same minutes with the same great players, but Ekholm has shown himself to be a better setter, and I'm using the hockey viz term for somebody who's great at passing and creating plays by setting up others. So that bodes well, because there's a lot of great setup guys, or guys to set up for Ekholm to play with. And that's one reason why, Elon, I'm hopeful. Like 50 points would be hard. Like that's a big jump. But I'm hopeful that, he's been a 30, 35 point guy. I'm hopeful that he can at least be in the 40s for Matthias Ekholm.
Yeah, like I just like that, he's going to be there with the big names, like you said.
He is. He's also hitting and blocking more in Edmonton than he was in Nashville. So there's that.
Yeah, come on, keep it going. Ekholm, don't make you regret this. All right, Brian, where should we go next year? Well, I guess we should take a break. Let's take our last break, and then we'll knock out everything else, which is a lot. So we'll be back in just a sec to get to some hot streaks and cold streaks. You're listening to Keeping Karlsson. All right, we are back, Brian. At this point, I'm just going to jump around. We have a lot of stuff still on our docket. We're going to share the notes with the patrons. They'll be able to see everyone if we don't get to everyone, but I'm going to do the ones that I'm most interested in. And so we'll jump around. I want to start in Toronto, okay? Because all of a sudden we have a new name, which is kind of an old name, back in the top 6, and that's Calle Jarnkrok. For a while he was, but when Ryan O'Reilly came, we're like, well, forget about Calle Jarnkrok now. But lately, Jarnkrok has been back playing with Auston Matthews. And I think before he wasn't with Matthews, right? It was Jarnkrok was playing with like Nylander and Tavares, and Bunting was playing with Matthews. Whatever. Anyways, Jarnkrok's really hot right now. He's got 6 points in his last 4 games. He just scored 2 goals against Ottawa. Auston Matthews is looking like the Auston Matthews that people were drafting super, high up, like first, second, or third in their leagues. He's got now 9 points in his last 6 games, taking a ton of shots. So Matthews is back to being like elite Matthews, which means you want exposure to him. And right now that guy is Calle Jarnkrok. So if you're in a deep league, Jarnkrok is available. I'd probably like him over a lot of potential people you have on your roster. Obviously, it's a very short-term thing. If you can fit him in, Toronto goes Tuesday, Thursday, Saturday, Sunday next week. So obviously don't add him if you're not going to get him until Sunday.
Right. And a great place to be playing alongside Auston Matthews. Super weird lines for the Leafs against Ottawa, though. Like, this is not a setup we often see where Tavares is with Bunting and Marner, Matthews with Kerfoot and Jarnkrok, and then Nylander, the odd one out, with Lafferty and Bobby McMahon. So
I got Bobby McMahon in my dynasty. Did he get a point? He didn't get a point. He still hasn't gotten a point. I got excited about him. He's apparently doing well in the minors. I'm still waiting for him to get me his first point.
Well, in any case, I don't know how long these lines are going to last. The Leafs did beat Ottawa with these lines, but it was in a shootout and after giving up 4 goals. So we'll see how...
Everyone beats Ottawa anyways. It's not a big deal.
Yeah, lately, for sure. But every single line lost the shot share battle against Ottawa. And one line, the Matthews, Kerfoot, Jarnkrok line, they narrowly won the shot attempt share battle. The other lines got filled in pretty badly. Actually, Ottawa roundly outplayed Toronto if you're looking at those numbers. So we'll see. I don't expect them to last too long, but as long as they do, know that Calle Jarnkrok, yes, is playing with Auston Matthews.
Okay, over in Philly, I wanted to bring up Owen Tippett, who's really just heating up lately. Like he just had 2 assists in that loss to Carolina. Before that, he had a hat trick versus Buffalo. Before that, Tippett was pointless for 3 games, but he had like 8 shots in one of those games and 3+ in all the others. Like, it's been a while since Tippett has had a game with like fewer than 3 shots. So he's really taking over as like the go-to guy over in Philly with obviously Konechny out of the lineup. I think Owen Tippett is like having a coming out party. I think next year you're going to want to draft him. You're not going to want to leave him undrafted. And I wouldn't be surprised. I don't want to get too crazy, but I think like at least like a 60-ish point guy. But like the thing is, it's Philly. Who knows? Like everyone's going to get hurt at some point. Who knows who he'll be playing with? But I'm like, at least for now, anyways, we don't need to worry about next year. We'll talk about him over the summer for that. But just for now, Philly only does have that Tuesday, Thursday, Saturday. So it's unfortunate, but I still would try to get Tippett in your lineup if you can. He's really breaking out right now.
Yeah. Okay. Like I'm willing to watch and see. He was traded to Florida at the deadline last year, right? In the Claude Giroux deal. And he started, well, sort of strong. I don't know if you could call it strong. He ended up 7 points in 21 games last season at the end. And then has been sort of on again, off again, but 39 points in 64 games on the season. Not too shabby at all, including 21 goals. And his shooting percentage is a pretty reasonable 11%, which means, yeah, he is taking a good enough amount of shots per game to expect him to have scored 21 goals already, 3 shots per game on average for Owen Tippett. He's pacing for 50 points. We'll see if he can keep this up. Like, I don't know. The shots are incredible lately, right? Like he's had several games where he's taken 6 or more shots over his last 10 or 11. That's what I want to see. So I'm really happy to see that. My only concern is that like the Flyers cannot score up until this moment where they put up 9 goals in their last 2 games. They had like zeros, ones, and twos for going back over 10 games. And without Konechny, I just don't know what's there. You've got Kevin Hayes still around and not doing a whole lot. Tony DeAngelo, like there's a lot of guys in Philly who are really difficult to roster. I might say that Owen Tippett is the one guy who's really proving that like having him on your roster is actually worthwhile right now. And that's in large part due to just those shots on goal. Because if Tippett isn't scoring, I'm going to say what I said about Konechny. I don't know who else is.
Yeah, though I would say that Philly does have another guy that interests me right now. Their version of Sammy Blais is Brendan Lemieux, who, you know, was barely getting ice time at all when he was over on LA, but now over on Philly. Lemieux, I guess he's a Torts guy, right? Like he's been playing with Kevin Hayes and James Van Riemsdyk, getting good ice time. Lemieux is pointing lately. Like if you look at his streak, he's got 4 points in his last 4 games, just had a goal and an assist in that game versus Carolina. And of course that comes along with 3, 4, 5 hits pretty much whenever he plays. So not a guarantee for points, obviously, though I do like the deployment right now. But if you need hits and then you want a guy who can give you those hits and the potential for points, I'll put Lemieux right up there with Sammy Blais. Though Blais getting more power play time. So I'd still take Blais over Lemieux, but you got another one in Brendan Lemieux. So throwing him out there.
That's a pretty good comparison. Lemieux was also scratched a couple times already, so we'll see if that happens again. And it wasn't like he was scratched the game after he scored a goal, so we'll see what happens in the games to come for Lemieux. But Elon, good call for somebody who might need his peripherals.
Yeah, patron Brandon wanted us to talk about Wyatt Johnston over on Dallas. Brian, so you were talking about a bunch of Calder candidates. Do you think that with no one really making a strong case for themselves, maybe Wyatt Johnston can get himself into the conversation before the end of the season? Because right now he's got goals in 4 straight games, so having a really nice run, 5 points over that stretch. Johnston has been playing on a line with Jamie Benn and Evgeny Dodonov, then also on the top power play. Very hard to crack the top line or the top power play on Dallas. So Johnston is probably in the best spot you can be outside of that. Obviously, he's not going to keep up this run, but is he someone that you're looking at to stream and potentially hold for the rest of the season? Looking at Dallas's schedule, it's another doozy, another Tuesday, Thursday, Saturday. So do you like Johnston enough to take him, even though you're going to have to probably be sitting someone else and not actually gaining any games by adding him?
Probably not. Those 4 goals have come on 11 shots. And while they've gotten Wyatt Johnston to the 20 goal mark as a 19-year-old rookie, like that's really impressive stuff. I don't really count on like this production continuing to come through. Generally, he takes a couple shots a night. And I think that means that you could probably expect a goal every 4 or 5 games instead of the every night that he's provided you with for the last 4 contests. It's a great look in a deeper league if you do have an open spot to fill, but otherwise I am not running out to go get Wyatt Johnston.
Yeah, not for this year. I think he's looking like he's going to be really, really good for years to come. If you're in a deep keeper dynasty type.
Picked a 23rd overall in 2021.
Dallas is good at drafting. They did have one easy pick recently, which was the 3rd overall pick in 2017. They took Miro Heiskanen. They didn't blow that pick. Well, I guess Makar did come after, so you could, but I don't think anyone's complaining right now. Heiskanen on a crazy run, 17 points in his last 10 games. He's up to now over 70-point pace on the season, looking like he probably will crack 70 with the run that he's on. So Brad, we don't even have time to dig into Miro Heiskanen. We just wanted to shout out how awesome he's been. Looking at another rookie though, why don't we go to Columbus and talk about Kent Johnson, who sometimes I mistake for Wyatt Johnston because their names are very similar. And Kent Johnson also is running a little hot again. He was doing this earlier in the year. And yeah, all of a sudden Johnson had, already. And all of a sudden, he's not even doing that hot actually, now that I look at it. But okay, I'll just keep going. Sometimes get their names mixed up. Now I forget my train of thought. Oh no. Okay. Next up, Brian, let's go to Columbus. We've got another potential Calder candidate. I mean, probably not, but another guy who I sometimes mix up for Wyatt Johnston is Kent Johnson, not on as hot a run, but Kent Johnson does have 5 points in his last 6 games. So thought I'd throw him out there. Of course, the real guys heating up on Columbus are the guys that nobody could get, Johnny Gaudreau and Patrick Laine. Wow. Okay. Like Gaudreau was like cold for a while. I wouldn't have even like been too mad at you if you needed to move on. But he had that big 2-goal, 3-assist game versus San Jose. Since then, he's been taking 4 shots every single game. Didn't get a point today against Vegas. Patrik Laine was on a really great hot streak going into today's game against Vegas, and it looks like he's continuing it. 2 assists today. So we're up to now 12 points in his last 9 games. So Patrik Laine, it doesn't even matter if he doesn't have the best players to play with. He's currently pacing for 76. Theoretically, he could even approach his career. His career high is 70 points. He's currently at, well, no, I guess he could beat the pace, but I guess he doesn't have enough games. Yeah, 50 points in 54 games. Brian, do you think that Laine is going to get to a point per game? And like, do you think that this is finally him emerging as a star, someone like meeting the potential that we were expecting out of him?
Even beating the pace for Patrik Laine would be like great, right? Like, I don't care if he doesn't meet his career high points. And Patrik Laine has done this pretty quietly too. He's almost a point per game through 54 games played, which, by the way, he did in Columbus last year. So this is Laine's second consecutive year of, I'm just going to call it, and I'm rounding up, essentially a point per game performance from Patrik Laine. And to me, it looks pretty sustainable. Like, I don't see any reason why he would do any worse now that we're seeing pretty consistent numbers with no unreasonable variance showing up. Like, maybe he's been in on like a couple extra power play points this year, and maybe that's enough cause to say, yeah, he is a 75-point player versus an 82-point player, maybe 75 point range, more like it. But Patrik Laine, thankfully, has found a home here in Columbus. And I think that this bodes well for anybody looking to draft him next year. It's been a while since we've known what we could expect from Laine. Of course, these are famous last words. This is when so many players go ahead and switch it up on us. But I've seen enough to comfortably expect that Laine can be in that 75, somewhere between that 70 to 80 point range. See, I'm still nervous to pick a more specific number than that. But that's what I'm looking for from Laine next year. And I would hope he only gets better as the players around him do the same.
Yeah, like if everyone's healthy, this team is better. Like if you have Zach Werenski on the power play, that's probably better than Boqvist and Blankenberg and whoever they've been stuck with. So yeah, I think things are going to get like better for Columbus as the years go on.
We should mention Boqvist if anyone's holding on. Probably a snoozer. He's still on the top power play. His shots are still decent, but he has just 1 point in his last 7 games.
Yeah, and he only plays one time before Friday. So yeah, definitely drop him, and then you could always add him back if you really are desperate for D and come Friday, Saturday, but probably not. Okay, Brian, the guy who Laine was traded for, of course, was Pierre-Luc Dubois, who missed a lot of time, but he's been back now for a couple games for the Jets. He got an assist in his return versus Nashville. Nothing today. He did take 4 shots, though. I am seeing that Dubois was off the top power play. The lines today were Dubois with Wheeler and Connor, and then Ehlers with Scheifele and Nino Niederreiter. And then the top power play, though, was Wheeler, who's been off the top power play for a lot of the season. He was on the top unit with Scheifele, Ehlers, Connor, and Morrissey, leaving both Dubois and Nino on the second power play. Of course, the Jets lost 3-0. They got shut out. So I wouldn't be surprised if maybe things get changed up for the next game. But anyways, Pierre-Luc Dubois, we know who he is. He's good. Nino Niederreiter is someone who a lot of people were really excited about after coming to Winnipeg and getting in such a good role. I should mention he is pointless in his last 3 games after that great stretch, though he does have 3, 4, and 4 shots in those 3 games. So Brian, are the shots enough to convince you that if you have been holding on to Nino, that you continue to hold on to him, or now that he's pointless in 3 off the top power play, is it time to move on?
Off the top power play is a bit of a bummer, but that the shots are still coming. But somehow Niederreiter still had almost 20 minutes of ice from the second unit on Saturday against Nashville. Played just under 15 minutes tonight against St. Louis, but that power play wasn't successful tonight against St. Louis. So maybe they shuffle the power plays back up again. I would hold on to Nino a little longer, assuming that he's going to actually get games in for you and you can't drop him to add more games that you might need for this upcoming matchup week. But yeah, he's done enough to earn at least a bit of a longer look if you can afford to give him one.
By the way, Shams is sharing in the chat here that Berube said on St. Louis that Hofer is going to stay here. So
wow. You know what? I feel like I thought about it a little more since we talked about it. And I feel like the Blues would love, like they are committed to Binnington to some extent, right? Like they signed him, they chose him over Husso. He's the one they chose. There's still 4 more years. Oof, at $6 million per season. But it seems like the coach is like over it with Binnington, and the team probably is too. Like how many you can afford a meltdown if you're playing well, but Binnington has not been doing that, and the Blues are awful. So I wonder if Hofer, like even splits the net at least. I could see
Or gets all the starts. Last year, Husso did it.
Yeah, I could see the Blues, honestly, despite Binnington, like he hasn't earned starts in his play or his off-ice behavior. So why not just like, if we're keeping Hofer, this kid comes in, he works hard, he plays well, give him the net.
Yeah, so very interesting. Yeah, I think if you have Binnington, I'm not taking him out of my IR, right? At the very least, until he gets a start. And if you need to add someone and you're stuck, I'm okay to drop him right now because Hofer seems like he's better. And also he's not going to be bringing as much drama. But it's like Edmonton. Sure, they're like technically, committed to Campbell, but obviously they're going to play Skinner if they want to actually go far and win. And so that's what they're going to do. Brian, all right. So at this point, we're nearing the end of our 2 hours allotment. There's still a few more names here on my sheet. Is there anything you wanted to specifically talk about of everyone I have listed here before we get out of here?
No, why don't you roll through it real quick just to, for completion's sake. And if I have something to add on top of anything you mention, I will.
All right, so let me see here. So Phil Grubauer may be hurt for Seattle. I don't think we have an update on him. Martin Jones stinks. So what are you going to do? I think that's because Grubauer has been pretty good, actually. It's kind of a bummer if you added him expecting to get volume, then for him to get hurt. So hopefully he's okay. Oliver Bjorkstrand, by the way, on Seattle, finally hot, kind of. So like, getting something out of him, especially in a cap league. I have him, Brian, in my dynasty where this cap has really started to eat away at me. Of like, I'm spending this much money for this. For Oliver Bjorkstrand not getting any points, but lately he's been good. So I like that for my playoffs. I also was going to mention Vince Dunn, super hot. I feel at this point I shouldn't even mention it. It's like saying that Adam Fox is hot, right? Like Vince Dunn just has been good all year and he continues to be good. The other streaks I wanted to mention, I guess, just the guys that you'll never be able to add, but just fun to look at, like Matthew Tkachuk and what he's doing over in Florida is like insane. He's looking like he could be like a top 5 pick maybe in fantasy next year. Like it's insane to think that in the summer we were sort of looking at like, they lost Huberdeau, they got Tkachuk, like kind of even Steven. Like no. Matthew Tkachuk is a huge superstar, and Huberdeau, the coach, doesn't even like him at all. Also Barkov, Montour are hot. Ekblad still off the top power play in Florida. Verhaeghe has bumped Ekblad from PP1. So I should have probably brought Ekblad up as one of those good defensemen.
Yeah, I have Ekblad as a keeper in a league we're both in, and I am concerned. Like, and it's a league where like I am not at all set at Devo. I have John Karlsson, who should have another little while in him, but Ekblad as a keeper does not seem as appealing as it once did. I already remember Seth Jones. I mentioned how long it had been since he had an assist. Aaron Ekblad has gone his last 16 games without collecting an assist. And a lot of that might be because, he's been on the top power play for a bunch of those games. So that's not it. He's still taking a ton of shots. Anyway, this is like just a bad development for somebody that I was willing to be patient on. And now that he's off the top power play, it's like, well, how patient do I really want to be while he struggles towards a 42-point pace? I think Ekblad has deserved better. I'm not sure how much better. And I definitely don't know how much better if he does not get that quarterback spot before the end of the season. It's going to be a tough decision to make for me.
Yeah, I mean, who would have bet on Brandon Montour being the clear better defenseman to have on Florida over Ekblad? But that's definitely the case right now. Montour is doing great. He continues to roll. He's on the top power play. There's no reason to take Ekblad over Montour at this point, in my opinion. Also, someone that a lot of people were excited to draft and potentially stash, Anthony Duclair. Not very exciting, right? Like, you stashed him all year waiting for this moment for him to get on the top line with Barkov. He's been there, but even though Barkov is doing great, like Duclair is pointless in his last 3 games, like barely shooting. So definitely drop him if you've just been holding on because you shouldn't have been. Who else here? Oh, Brandon Hagel all of a sudden is hot. So that's exciting, right? He got a hat trick in his last game. He's back on that top line playing with Kucherov and Point. I guess Tampa did play a game today. Let me see. Let's get the update here. I already talked about it, how New Jersey won 5-2. And the Tampa goals were Kucherov from Stamkos and then Killorn from Chernak and Cirelli. So nothing for Hagel here. It's an interesting question, Brian. Another one of those line one versus power play ones like I did in Colorado with Comfer versus Rodriguez. Over in Tampa Bay, I was going to ask you, who would you rather have? Hagel on the top line with Kucherov and Braden Point, or Alex Killorn, who's not on the most exciting line, but is on that top power play and is super hot right now. But so is Hagel. So actually, I'm into both of them. But who would you take if you had to only pick one?
It feels very much like the Colorado situation too. I don't know that, like, I would pick whichever one's available to me. I will say that like Tampa today at the end of the game, they did reunite Stamkos, Point, and Kucherov. Although, like, I think that might just be like a situational thing. I don't know that they plan to spend whole games doing that, but that would be a reason, to knock Hagel down a notch. Whereas I think Killorn is pretty settled in on that top power play. So, like, give me Killorn is like the boring choice, and Hagel is the one with the exciting upside.
Hey, if my boring choice is giving me 2, 4, 5, 6, 7 goals in his last 10 games, 7 goals and 3 assists, I'll take it. I'll take that every day of the week. I got him in that league, Brian. He's not going to be a keeper for me in the league that we're in, but I'm in a tough playoff matchup against Jeremy, and Killorn is helping me hang in there. It's going to be tough. Jeremy is very good at fantasy and at knowing how to use Fantrax to its maximum potential to your advantage. And so, yeah, we'll see if I can get through here, me and John. But yeah, Brian, I think that's it. Oh, Josh Anderson is hot on Montreal. I don't know. We've mentioned him before. Someone to take a look at if he's in free agency. I think I'm good. So I really want to thank everyone for listening, especially if you've made it all the way to the end of a 2-hour blockbuster mega show. This must be because either A, you're fighting for your life in fantasy and you want to take any help you can get, or B, you're a fan of the show. We appreciate you in either case, right? And anyone who's like listening to us all season, you're the ones who are keeping us going here. And so, yeah, we really appreciate it. And we hope that you've enjoyed the season of Keeping Karlsson as we slowly start winding down. But like Brian said, we still got a great couple weeks of the playoffs to finish off. And then we're going to have that Keeping Karlsson playoff pool, which has become a really fun tradition. So if you're a patron of Keeping Karlsson, please don't leave. We're going to have a lot of fun in the playoffs still. And I believe, Brian, didn't I win this Keeping Karlsson sweatshirt from winning the playoff pool? I got this sweatshirt for something. You
did. Yeah, that's what you got it for.
It's a little small. Like when I lift my hands over my head, you could see my midriff. And I've been doing a lot of like lifting my baby over my head lately. And so Dina keeps telling me your belly is showing. So maybe I should have asked you for a bigger size. But aside from that, I really like it.
Thanks for that context.
All right. So with that, Brian, yeah, you can become a patron. By the way, if you're not a patron, you can join the playoff pool when we get. I'll just say really quickly, okay? The way the playoff pool works is we redraft every round. And so if you like rank high enough in the first round, you like survive to the second round. And we keep knocking people out until by the end, there's only like a few people left fighting in the final. So it's a really fun format. Ben Burnett made it up a few years back. But okay, with that, Brian, let's cue the outro music. Go ahead and read us the credits. Take us out of here.
All right. This episode of the Keeping Karlsson Fantasy Hockey Podcast was presented by Dabra Hockey and powered by our patrons, including our super supporters, Ricard, Rob, David, Derek, Ryan, Tom, Andrea, Ivan, Tyler, Aaron, and Adam, and of course, Patty. Thank you all so much for your super support, and all our patrons for your support. Also, shout out to Edward, who I mentioned has done a little bit of graphic design work at Kakupful.com, and for our Sweden division. You can check out more of his stuff at like40, like40.com. Also, go to Kakupful.com, go to the standings, click through to Sweden, and you can see the matchups play out this week as we are down to our final 4 fighting for that Keeping Karlsson Ultimate Playoff Championship. The most celebrated person in all of fantasy hockey. I was going to go for celebrated too. Yeah, this is what you play for. All right. Thank you.
Can I give my pick? Do you have a pick of who you think is going to win?
Yeah, I'm going with Mark.
Marcus,
he's been like the top player for 2 years now. Like, I know you beat him last year, and I think he wasn't first, right? I think he finished second in the division, but he seems unstoppable.
Yeah, he's really good. I really feel like I was lucky to, happen to catch him on not a great week in the finals last year. That's what happens when you're playing head-to-head 1 week playoffs. But yeah, I'll always, when Mark goes on to, potentially be like a 5-time Kakupful Ultimate Champion, I'll be able to say that I was the one who beat him one time a long time ago. But yeah, all the competitors are great. Like you said, Ryan, who won the fast track. Jeremy has been like really great forever.
Jeremy's not there.
Not Jeremy. Sorry. Yeah. Jordan's been like really great forever, always in tier 1 ranking high, and Harrison, like, yeah, it's going to be really exciting to see how this plays out.
These are the 4 best fantasy hockey managers in the world. So I can't wait to find out what happens. Follow along with us, kkupfl.com. Thanks to Kevin Hebert and our team of co-commissioners helping keep the Kakupful running smoothly. Thank you to you, Elon, and Shams Benamor for all of the fantasy news coming at GameDayTweets.com, and also Shams, Lewis, and Jeremy keeping those short shifts F's coming. Logo art by BrandonWeave.com. Outro music by Pat Roach. This episode was researched with help from Dabra Hockey, Frozen Tools, Dabra Prospects, Natural Stat Trick, Evolving Hockey, Cap Friendly, The Athletic, HockeyGoldies.org, Hockey Reference, Hockey Viz, Hockey Database, Elite Prospects, and Yahoo.
Great job as always, Brian. Really fun to do another show with you after your vacation. Back in, regulars back in top form, like as we were all expecting. This is great. And what should we all do? Well, okay, sorry. Back in top form, Brian, of course, like I mentioned, we're going to have another big week of shows with short shifts coming. And then we're going to be back next weekend to do this all over again to preview the finals week in the Cupful. And what should we all do while we're taking in this very exciting week of fantasy hockey?
Well, please make sure you're doing all that you can so that fantasy hockey is something that can be for everyone.
Yes. Good job.
All right.
Thanks,
Good
everyone.
job. I'm gonna pull the Elon.
Peace.
Bye.
I want to pull the Elon.
Thanks everyone for being here. Okay, that's
you can't fire me. I quit.
Could you imagine? Okay. Yeah. Thanks everybody for listening and watching and supporting us. You're the greatest.
See ya.
Okay.
Bye.